Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto was reborn in My Hero Academia and built a harem with Ochaco, Momo, and Nejire? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. #CH. After 1. Awakening in a new world. The first thing Naruto Uzumaki felt was rain. Cold droplets pelting his face, running in rivulets down his cheeks and neck. His body ached, not the familiar pain of chakra exhaustion, but something deeper. As if he'd been pulled apart and hastily reassembled. His eyes fluttered open to a slate-gray sky framed by unfamiliar buildings that loomed impossibly high, the IR glass surfaces reflecting clouds and artificial lights. The alley around him smelled of garbage and something metallic, not blood, but the scent of a world built on steel and concrete rather than wood and stone. What the hell? He groaned, pushing himself upright. His mind raced through fragmented memories. The fourth great ninja war, Madara and Obito, the 10 tails, and finally, sacrifice. He remembered channeling everything he had. His chakra, Kurama's power, even his life force, into one final attack to seal away the dimensional rift that threatened to consume everything. He should be dead, or at the very least, lost in some void between worlds. Instead, he sat in a grimy alley, soaked to the bone, wearing his tattered orange and black outfit. His headband was still tied securely around his forehead, the leaf symbol a comforting reminder of home. "Konoha," he whispered, then looked around with growing urgency. "Sakura, Kakashi-sensei, Sasuke." Only the distant sounds of an unfamiliar city answered him. Traffic, strange mechanical noises, and voices that spoke a language he somehow understood despite never having learned it. Naruto closed his eyes and reached inward, seeking the familiar presence of Kurama. Where the Nine Tails consciousness should have been roaring with power and sardonic commentary, he found only a dim, pulsing ember, present but dormant, as if in deep hibernation. "Kurama," he called mentally. No response. Testing his own power, Naruto attempted to form a simple shadow clone. The familiar hand sign felt right, and he sensed chakra stirring within him, far less than normal, but present. Shadow clone jutsu. A puff of smoke yielded a single clone, pale, slightly transparent, and clearly unstable. It wobbled, gave Naruto a weak thumbs up, and dissipated. "Well, that's something at least," he muttered, pushing himself to his feet. His legs trembled beneath him as he made his way toward the alley's entrance. The street beyond was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Vehicles without horses zipped past on smooth black roads, people walked with glowing rectangles held to their ears, and massive screens displayed moving images on building sides. Definitely not the Five Nations, Naruto concluded, earning strange glances from passers-by. Some seemed perfectly normal, while others. His eyes widened at a woman with skin the color of lavender, a man with 4 arms casually carrying groceries, and a child floating several inches off the ground while her mother held her ankle like a balloon. Before he could process this bizarre new reality, screams erupted from down the street. Instinct kicked in. Whatever strange world he'd landed in, people in danger meant someone needed to act. Naruto sprinted toward the commotion, his body protesting but responding. Ahead, a creature that looked more plant than human was swinging enormous vine-like appendages at storefronts and civilians. Its head resembled a massive Venus flytrap, snapping at anything that came too close. "Give me all your valuables," the plant thing bellowed, "unless you want to become fertilizer." Police officers huddled behind vehicles, their weapons drawn but ineffective against the writhing mass of vegetation. One brave officer fired several shots, only for the bullets to embed harmlessly in the creature's fibrous hide. "Stand back," a woman in uniform shouted to civilians. "Pro-heroes are on their way." Pro-heroes. Naruto didn't have time to question the terminology. A young girl had frozen in terror as one of the plant villain's vines whipped toward her. Without thinking, Naruto channeled chakra to his feet and launched himself forward. He felt the familiar surge of energy, but weaker, more sluggish, like trying to run through deep water. Still, it was enough. He snatched the girl moments before the vine smashed into the concrete where she'd been standing. Rolling to his feet with the child in his arms, he deposited her with her tearful mother before turning to face the threat. "Hey, vegetable face," Naruto called out. "Why don't you pick on someone who can fight back?" The plant villain swiveled its monstrous head toward him, jaws snapping. "Who the hell are you supposed to be? Some wannabe hero in a Halloween costume?" Naruto grinned, the familiar rush of adrenaline drowning out the confusion of his circumstances. "Just someone who doesn't like bullies." Assessing his options quickly, Naruto knew his chakra reserves were limited. No Rasengan, no Sage Mode. He'd have to rely on basics and tactical advantage. The villain lashed out with 3 vines simultaneously. Naruto leapt, his body responding with less power than he was accustomed to but still with far greater agility than an ordinary human. He twisted between the striking appendages, producing a kunai from his pouch and slicing through one vine as he passed. The plant creature howled in pain, green ichor spraying from the severed vine. "You little bastard, I'll digest you slowly for that. Gotta catch me first," Naruto taunted, leading the villain away from civilians. He landed on a lamppost, balancing easily despite his weakened state. Drawing shuriken, he launched them strategically, not at the creature's body, but at the base of a store's awning above it. The fabric collapsed, momentarily entangling the thrashing vines. Using the distraction, Naruto focused his limited chakra. One decent water-style jutsu might be enough to weaken the plant-based villain. He'd never been particularly skilled with water techniques, but desperation fueled innovation. Water style. Wild water wave. The jutsu emerged weaker than intended. Not the torrent he'd hoped for, but a focused spray that soaked the villain thoroughly. The plant man's movements immediately became sluggish as water weighed down its fibrous body. "What the? You're not registered. What's your quirk classification?" the villain demanded, confusion momentarily overriding its aggression. Naruto didn't understand the question, but it didn't matter. He formed another hand sign. Shadow clone jutsu. This time, concentrating harder, he managed 3 clones, still pale and slightly translucent, but stable enough to fight. The clones converged on the waterlogged villain from different angles, each delivering powerful kicks that sent the plant man staggering backward. The real Naruto channeled chakra to his fist, not enough for a Rasengan, but sufficient to enhance his strike, and delivered a devastating blow to what passed for the villain's face. The flytrap head snapped shut reflexively, then the entire creature toppled backward, unconscious. Naruto dispelled his clones, immediately feeling the strain of even this limited chakra use. Gasping for breath, he leaned against a wall as police cautiously approached the downed villain. "That was amazing," someone in the gathering crowd exclaimed. "I've never seen a quirk like that before, water and clones and super strength. Is he a new pro? What agency is he with?" The murmurs grew as people filmed him with their devices. Naruto tensed, uncertain how to respond. In his world, ninja abilities were common knowledge. Here, he seemed to be an anomaly. Before he could decide on a course of action, a new figure arrived, a tall, skeletal man with sunken eyes and wild blonde hair. Despite his emaciated appearance, the crowd immediately recognized him, breaking into excited whispers. "All Might, it's really him, but he's in his weak form." The skeletal man approached Naruto, blood leaking slightly from the corner of his mouth. "Impressive work, young man," he said quietly. "But perhaps we should talk somewhere less public." Naruto sensed no malice from the strange man, only curiosity and a strange resonance, as if he too held a power that wasn't entirely his own. "Sure," Naruto agreed, pushing off the wall. "I've got a lot of questions anyway." "I imagine you do," the man replied with a knowing smile. "My name is Toshinori Yagi. And you are?" "Naruto Uzumaki." "Well, Naruto Uzumaki, I think Principal Nezu will want to meet you." Naruto sat uncomfortably in an office unlike any he'd seen before. The chair beneath him was plush and ergonomic, a far cry from the wooden seats of the Hokage's office. Through large windows, he could see a sprawling campus of futuristic buildings and training grounds. Across from him sat what appeared to be a highly intelligent animal in a suit, Principal Nezu, as he'd introduced himself. Beside Nezu stood a gaunt man with long black hair and tired eyes, wrapped in a strange gray scarf. Toshinori had introduced him as Shota Aizawa before excusing himself to attend to other matters. "So, Mr. Uzumaki," Nezu began, his voice surprisingly articulate and pleasant. You claim to have no knowledge of quirks, hero society, or even the basic geography of modern Japan. Naruto shifted in his seat. Look, I know it sounds crazy, but I'm telling the truth. Where I come from, we have shinobi, not heroes. We use chakra, not quirks. And I've never heard of Japan until today. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. And where exactly do you come from? The village hidden in the leaves. Konohagakure, in the land of fire. One of the 5 great shinobi nations. Nezu and Aizawa exchanged glances. I accessed every database available while you were explaining earlier, Nezu stated calmly. No such places exist on Earth. Naruto ran a hand through his spiky blonde hair. Yeah, well, I'm starting to think I'm not on my Earth anymore. He recounted the final battle again. The dimensional rift, his sacrifice, awakening in the alley. Dimensional travel, Nezu mused, tapping his paw on the desk. Fascinating hypothesis. Normally I'd dismiss such claims, but your abilities are unusual. When I tried to erase your power, Aizawa added, nothing happened. My quirk negates the abilities of anyone I observe, yet your chakra remained unaffected. Naruto shrugged. Because it's not a quirk. It's life energy, physical and spiritual energy combined. Nezu leaned forward. Would you be willing to demonstrate again? Something non-destructive. Naruto nodded, forming a hand sign. Transform. In a puff of smoke, he took on the appearance of Nezu himself, matching the principal's form perfectly. Nezu clapped his paws together in delight. Remarkable. Such perfect mimicry without changing mass or requiring physical contact. Naruto released the transformation. It's just basic ninjutsu. Academy students can do this. Where you're from, perhaps, Aizawa commented. Here, it's extraordinary. Nezu studied Naruto thoughtfully. You're young. What, 16, 17, 17, Naruto confirmed. Though I've been a ninja since I was 12. And now you find yourself stranded in an unfamiliar world, Nezu concluded. The question becomes, what do we do with you? Aizawa crossed his arms. He's an unknown variable with potentially dangerous abilities. Containment would be the prudent course. Naruto tensed, ready to flee if necessary. But Nezu raised a paw. I disagree, Aizawa. If his story is true, and my instincts suggest it is, then Mr. Uzumaki is a refugee, not a threat. He used his abilities to protect civilians without hesitation. Nezu turned to Naruto. What would you do if you could stay here freely? The question caught Naruto off guard. He hadn't thought beyond understanding where he was. I don't know. Find a way home, I guess. But until then, he thought of the plant villain, the fear in people's eyes. I'd want to help. It's what I've always done. Nezu nodded, seeming pleased. Then I have a proposal. UA High School. This institution trains the next generation of heroes. We offer you enrollment as a special transfer student. You'll learn about our world while we learn about yours. Most importantly, you'll gain legal authorization to use your abilities. School. Naruto grimaced. I wasn't exactly star student material back home. Consider the alternative, Aizawa said flatly. Unauthorized quirk use carries serious penalties. Without proper documentation, which you lack entirely, you'd eventually be arrested. Nezu pushed a folder across the desk. We CAN create a cover identity with the necessary paperwork. In exchange, you'll submit to power assessment, attend classes, and follow our regulations. Naruto opened the folder, finding documents with his name already printed on them. You decided before I even got here. I considered various scenarios while waiting, Nezu replied with a small smile. Being prepared is simply good leadership. Naruto stared at the UA uniform illustration in the folder. It was nothing like his orange jumpsuit, but then nothing about this world matched what he knew. If he wanted to find his way home, or make an A.W. life here, if that proved impossible, he needed allies and knowledge. All right, he finally said. I'll do it. Excellent, Nezu exclaimed. You'll join Class 1A immediately. Aizawa here is their homeroom teacher. Aizawa didn't look thrilled. I'll be watching you closely, Uzumaki. One step out of line. Yeah, Naruto interrupted with a familiar grin. I've dealt with strict teachers before. You can't be worse than Iruka-sensei when I painted the Hokage monument. Nezu chuckled while Aizawa's expression remained stony. Classes begin at 8:30 tomorrow, Aizawa stated. Don't be late. Naruto spent the night in a spare dorm room, provided with basic necessities and a set of school uniforms that felt stiff and constraining compared to his ninja gear. He'd been given access to something called the internet via a laptop computer, which left him simultaneously fascinated and frustrated as he attempted to learn about this new world. Quirks, he muttered, reading through articles. Superpowers that appeared a few centuries ago. Now 80% of the population has them. Hero is a profession. He scrolled through images of costumed heroes, news articles about villain attacks, and historical accounts of how society had transformed around these abilities. At least they're used to weird powers, he said to himself. Just not mine, specifically. Sleep came fitfully that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of those he'd left behind. Kakashi, Sakura, Sasuke, all the friends who had fought alongside him. Were they safe? Did they think he was dead? Had his sacrifice even worked? And deeper, in the recesses of his mind where Kurama usually resided, he felt only the faintest pulse of chakra, like a heartbeat growing gradually stronger but still far too weak. Morning arrived too quickly. Naruto donned the unfamiliar uniform, grimacing at his reflection. The buttoned shirt and tie felt restrictive, the pants too formal. He'd insisted on keeping his headband, at least, tying it around his arm as a compromise. Aizawa met him outside the dorm, looking as tired as Naruto felt. Follow me, he instructed without preamble. And remember, you're a transfer student with a complex quirk. Nothing about other dimensions or chakra. Got it, Naruto replied, following the teacher across campus. Just curious, what's my cover story? Homeschooled in a remote region. Family recently relocated. Recommendation admission due to your performance against a villain. Aizawa glanced back. Keep it vague. Most students won't pry beyond that. They arrived at a massive door labeled 1A. Naruto felt a flutter of nervousness he hadn't experienced since his first days at the academy. There, at least, he'd understood the rules, even if he'd delighted in breaking them. Here, everything was foreign. Aizawa slid the door open and walked in. The chattering class immediately fell silent. Morning, Aizawa said tonelessly. We have a new transfer student joining us today. He gestured for Naruto to enter. Taking a deep breath, Naruto stepped into the classroom. 20 pairs of eyes fixed on him. Some curious, others assessing, a few wary. The diverse ity of appearances was striking. Students with animal features, unusual colorations, visible physical mutations. Introduce yourself, Aizawa prompted. Naruto straightened, summoning his characteristic confidence. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I'm new to the area. He resisted the urge to add his usual declaration about becoming Hokage. It would mean nothing here. Instead, he finished with, I'm looking forward to training with you all. A green-haired boy near the front raised his hand immediately. What's your quirk? He asked, eyes alight with analytical curiosity. Before Naruto could respond, Aizawa intervened. Midoriya, there will be time for questions later. Uzumaki's quirk is complex, energy manipulation that manifests in multiple ways. You'll see it during practical training. A spiky-haired blonde scoffed. Bet it's not that impressive if he's being so mysterious about it. Bakugo, Aizawa warned. That's enough. He directed Naruto to an empty desk near the back. As Naruto made his way down the aisle, a round-faced girl with rosy cheeks smiled warmly at him. Welcome to UA, she whispered as he passed. I'm Ochaco Uraraka. Thanks, Naruto replied, returning her smile. There was something instantly likable about her, an openness that reminded him of home. He took his seat as Aizawa began the day's lesson, which quickly devolved into a lecture about hero laws that made Naruto's eyes glaze over. In Konoha, the rules had been simpler. Complete the mission, protect your team, defend the village. Here, there seemed to be regulations for everything. When lunch period arrived, Naruto found himself surrounded by curious classmates. So where did you transfer from? Asked a red-haired boy who had introduced himself as Kirishima. A small town, pretty remote, Naruto replied vaguely. You wouldn't have heard of it. And your quirk? The green-haired boy, Midoriya, had his notebook ready. Mr. Aizawa said energy manipulation, but that's really broad. Naruto scratched his head. It's kind of hard to explain. Easier to show in practice. We have hero training this afternoon, Uraraka offered, joining the conversation. You can demonstrate then. Looking forward to it, Naruto said with genuine enthusiasm. Physical training he understood, at least. A tall student with glasses and mechanical-looking legs approached. I am Tenya Iida, class representative. I've been instructed to provide you with all necessary materials and orientation information. Naruto accepted a thick folder from the serious student. Thanks. This place has a lot more paperwork than I'm used to. Proper documentation is the foundation of an orderly hero society. Iida declared with robotic arm movements. Naruto struggled not to laugh. This guy reminded him of a more uptight version of Lee. Don't mind him, whispered a girl with long dark hair pulled into a spiky ponytail. I'm Momo Yaoyorozu, vice representative. If you need any assistance that doesn't involve regulatory lectures, feel free to ask me instead. The conversation flowed around him, names and quirk descriptions coming too fast to fully absorb. Despite the overwhelming newness, Naruto found himself relaxing slightly. Different as this world was. Teenagers were still teenagers, some friendly, some standoffish, all trying to figure out their place. After lunch came the part of the day Naruto had been anticipating, hero training. The class changed into their hero costumes, Naruto having been provided a simple training uniform until he could design his own. They gathered at a training ground that resembled a small urban center. With all might, now transformed into a massive, muscle-bound version of the skeletal man Naruto had met, leading the session. Today's exercise is rescue and combat. All Might announced, his voice booming. Villains have taken hostages in various buildings. Heroes must secure civilians while neutralizing threats. The class was divided into teams. Naruto found himself grouped with Uraraka, a frog-like girl named Asui, and a boy with a bird-shaped head called Tokiyami. Uzumaki, All Might said quietly as the teams strategized. This is an opportunity to demonstrate your abilities in a controlled setting. Don't hold back unnecessarily. Naruto nodded, grateful for the chance to work with powers he actually understood. Their team was assigned to a 5-story building with hostages, training dummies, and 2 villains, Aizawa and a pro-hero Naruto hadn't met named Midnight. Okay, Naruto said as they huddled outside. What can everyone do? Uraraka demonstrated her zero-gravity touch. I can make anything I touch with all 5 fingers weightless, but I get nauseous if I overuse it. Asui listed her frog-like abilities: jumping, a prehensile tongue, wall climbing, and mild toxic secretions. Tokiyami summoned a shadow entity he called Dark Shadow, which could attack independently but weakened in bright light. That's awesome, Naruto said genuinely. Okay, here's what I think we should do. To his surprise, they listened attentively as he outlined a plan that utilized each of their strengths. Years of mission experience had taught him how to assess capabilities quickly and adapt. Asui, you and Uraraka enter through the 3rd-floor window. Asui's camouflage and Uraraka's quirk make you ideal for finding and evacuating hostages. Tokiyami, you and Dark Shadow guard the main entrance and watch for villain counterattacks. I'll create a distraction on the roof that should draw their attention upward. You can get to the roof easily? Asui asked, tilting her head. Naruto grinned. Just watch. The exercise began. As his teammates moved into position, Naruto channeled chakra to his feet and ran straight up the side of the building. He heard gasps from the observing students below. He's walking on walls like Asui, but without adhesive, someone exclaimed. Reaching the roof, Naruto created 5 shadow clones, each more stable than his previous attempts. His chakra slowly recovering its potency. The clones spread out, making noise and visible movement to attract attention. The strategy worked. Aizawa emerged onto the roof, capture weapon ready. Interesting choice, Uzumaki. Naruto and his clones surrounded the teacher. I figured you'd be curious enough about my abilities to come yourself. Correct. Aizawa's eyes glowed red, his hair lifting as he activated his quirk. Let's see how you fight without your power. One clone charged, only to be caught in Aizawa's capture weapon and dispelled. Naruto noted with interest that while Aizawa looked directly at the clone, it hadn't lost its chakra form before being struck. Your erasure doesn't affect my clones once they're created, Naruto observed, another clone testing the theory by launching a kunai. Aizawa dodged the projectile, another difference between quirks and your chakra. The remaining clones attacked in coordinated patterns, occupying Aizawa while the real Yuto slipped behind an air conditioning unit and created more clones. These new duplicates transformed into small pebbles, which Naruto scattered across the roof. Meanwhile, below, his teammates had successfully located 2 hostages. Uraraka made them weightless, allowing Asui to maneuver them out windows with her tongue. Tokiyami had engaged Midnight, Dark Shadow keeping the sleep-inducing hero at a safe distance. Naruto continued his battle with Aizawa, purposely keeping the teacher focused on the roof. Each time Aizawa seemed to gain the upper hand, more Naruto clones would appear from unexpected directions, popping out of their pebble disguises when Aizawa stepped near. Your tactical awareness is impressive, Aizawa admitted after dispelling the 5th wave of clones. But you're still too predictable. The capture weapon shot out, wrapping around Naruto's torso. He struggled briefly, then grinned as he burst into smoke, another clone. The real Naruto appeared behind Aizawa, a paper tag in hand. Ninja don't just fight with power. We fight with deception. He slapped the tag onto Aizawa's back. It wasn't an explosive seal, he wouldn't use those in training, but rather a simple chakra marker he'd prepared. In a real battle, it would allow tracking or targeted jutsu. Exercise complete. All Might's voice boomed through speakers. Hostages secured, villains neutralized. Aizawa reached back, peeling off the tag. What is this? Just a marker, Naruto explained. In my world, we use them for tracking targets or setting up more complex techniques. Aizawa studied the paper with its intricate calligraphy. Hand-drawn. I'm not great at sealing jutsu, Naruto admitted. But the basics work. They descended to rejoin the class, where Naruto found his teammates celebrating their success. Uraraka bounced excitedly. That was amazing. The way you created copies of yourself and ran up walls. Her eyes shone with admiration. Is that all part of your quirk? Before Naruto could respond, All Might gathered everyone for review. Excellent work, especially from our new student. Young Uzumaki demonstrated not only impressive abilities but tactical leadership that maximized his team's effectiveness. The spiky-haired Bakugo scowled. He just made copies and ran around. Big deal. You're welcome to challenge me yourself sometime, Naruto replied evenly, the competitive stat. Eminent slipping out before he could stop it. Bakugo's palms sparked with small explosions. Name the time and place, new kid. That's enough, Aizawa intervened. Save it for authorized training. All Might continued his assessment, praising and critiquing each team's performance. Naruto found Uraraka standing beside him. You were really good out there, she said. The way you came up with that plan so quickly. You must have done this kind of thing before. Naruto thought of countless missions, battles, and wars. Something like that. Well, I'm glad you're on our team now, she said with a genuine smile that caused an unexpected warmth in Naruto's chest. As they walked back to the main building, Naruto realized he was smiling too. Different as this world was, the camaraderie of working with a team felt familiar. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a place here while figuring out how to get home. That night, Naruto sat cross-legged on his dorm room floor, attempting to meditate. After a day of pretending to understand this world's technology, customs, and educational system, he needed to center himself. He closed his eyes, steadying his breathing as Jiraiya had taught him years ago. Gradually, the sounds of the dorm faded. He turned his focus inward, following the pathways of chakra flowing through his body. Deeper he went, to the sealed space within his consciousness where Kurama resided. The familiar mindscape materialized around him, but changed. The vast chamber that usually housed the Nine Tails appeared cracked, portions of it fading into mist. The massive gate had once contained the fox stood partially open, its seals dimmed. Kurama, Naruto called, his voice echoing. A rumbling growl answered him. In the shadows beyond the gate, a single massive red eye opened lazily. You're alive, the fox observed, its voice weaker than Naruto remembered but still resonant with power. "So are you," Naruto replied with relief. "What happened to us?" Kurama shifted, revealing more of his form. Diminished, his 9 tails less substantial than before. "You tore a hole between worlds, Kit. Nearly killed us both. The dimensional rift. Did we seal it? Yes. But the backlash threw us elsewhere." The fox's eye narrowed. "This world feels strange. The energy here is different. They call it quirks instead of chakra," Naruto explained. "And they have heroes instead of shinobi." Kurama snorted. "Heroes? How quaint. Can we get back home?" The fox was silent for a long moment. "I don't know. My power is severely depleted. The journey between dimensions nearly destroyed us. Without understanding how we arrived, attempting to return could obliterate what remains of both our chakras." Naruto absorbed this sobering news. "So we're stuck here. For now." Kurama's eye gleamed. "But I am recovering, slowly. I sense your chakra pathways adapting to this world's energy. Given time, we may regain our full strength. And then we reassess." The fox yawned, showing massive teeth. "Until then, try not to get yourself killed in this strange place. I'm going back to sleep. Healing takes energy." The eye closed, and Naruto felt himself being pushed back to consciousness. He opened his eyes to find his dorm room exactly as he'd left it, except for one detail: a faint orange glow surrounded his body, dissipating as he watched. A soft knock at his door startled him. Rising quickly, Naruto opened it to find Aizawa standing in the hallway. "Problem?" Naruto asked. "Security sensors detected an energy surge in your room," Aizawa stated, eyes scanning the space behind Naruto. Explanation. Naruto considered lying, then decided against it. Nezu and Aizawa already knew most of his story. "I was meditating, communicating with part of my power." Aizawa raised an eyebrow. "The 9 tails you mentioned." "Kurama," Naruto corrected. "He's not just a power source. He's a sentient being sealed within me. Another detail you neglected to share earlier." Naruto shrugged. "It's complicated. Would you tell strangers about every aspect of your abilities right away?" After a moment, Aizawa conceded the point with a slight nod. "Any relevant information I should know. He's weak right now, recovering. But he confirmed we're stuck here for the foreseeable future." Naruto leaned against the doorframe. "So it looks like you're stuck with me as a student for a while." "Wonderful," Aizawa deadpanned. "Try to keep your conversations with this entity less energetically disruptive. The sensors are designed to detect villain infiltration." "I'll work on it," Naruto promised. After Aizawa left, Naruto returned to his bed, mind racing. Confirmation that he couldn't easily return home created conflicting emotions. Disappointment, certainly, but also a strange relief. There was no immediate decision to make, no impossible choice between worlds. For now, he simply had to adapt and survive. One day at a time, he murmured to himself, an aproac that had served him well through numerous crises. As he drifted toward sleep, his thoughts turned to his new classmates, Uraraka's welcoming smile, Midoriya's analytical mind, even Bakugo's challenging glare. Different as they were from his friends in Konoha, they were fellow warriors on their own paths to becoming protectors. Perhaps there was something to learn from them, just as they seemed eager to learn from him. Across the city, in an abandoned warehouse, a figure stood before multiple screens displaying footage from the UA training grounds. The central screen showed Naruto running up a vertical wall, creating clones and fighting with techniques unknown to this world. "Fascinating," the figure murmured, freezing the image and zooming in on Naruto's determined expression. RGY's signatures unlike anything in our database." A door opened behind them, and a subordinate entered. "Sir, analysis complete. His energy pattern matches the dimensional anomaly detected 3 days ago." As expected, the figure turned, face hidden in shadow except for a gleaming monocular device over one eye. "Prepare the containment unit. I want samples as soon as possible. The subject is at UA. Security will be a challenge. Yes, but not insurmountable." The figure zoomed in further, focusing on the whisker marks on Naruto's cheeks. "He doesn't belong here. His mere presence threatens the stability of our reality. The dimensional arbiters will proceed as ordered, then. Yes, observe for now. Document his abilities." When we understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. The figure's hand clenched, crushing a metal cup effortlessly. Then we'll remove this anomaly before it's too late. On the screen, Naruto laughed at something Uraraka said, unaware of the forces already mobilizing against him. The following days established a routine. Mornings meant academic classes that Naruto struggled through, afternoons brought physical and quirk training where he excelled. His classmates grew accustomed to his presence, though questions about his background persisted. "I still don't understand how your quirk works," Midoriya said during lunch a week after Naruto's arrival. "It's like multiple quirks in one: physical enhancement, duplication, transformation." Naruto chewed his food. This world's ramen was different but still delicious. Think of it as energy control. The applications are just different techniques using the same base power. Like how my explosions can be used for attacks or mobility, Bakugo interjected unexpectedly, having apparently been listening nearby. Exactly, Naruto agreed, surprised by the apt comparison. Uraraka joined their table, tray in hand. "Are you getting used to everything, Naruto?" "Mostly," he replied, "still can't figure out half the technology. Though," she laughed, "you really did grow up somewhere remote, huh? I can help with that. I'm not the best with tech either, but I know the basics." "I'd appreciate it," Naruto said gratefully. Their conversation was interrupted by alarms blaring throughout the building. "Security breach," Iida announced, standing immediately. "Everyone remain calm and follow evacuation procedures." Students moved with practiced efficiency toward designated exits. Outside, pro heroes were already mobilizing around the perimeter. "What's happening?" Naruto asked as they assembled in the courtyard. "Probably journalists again," Kirishima suggested. They broke in once before. But Naruto sensed something else, a strange energy signature approaching rapidly. Without thinking, he pushed Uraraka aside just as a beam of light struck where she'd been standing, leaving a smoking crater in the concrete. "Everyone down," Naruto shouted, scanning the sky. A figure hovered above them, surrounded by a pulsing field of energy unlike any quirk Naruto had observed. The person wore a high-tech suit with a distinctive visor covering their eyes. "Uzumaki Naruto," the figure called down. "Dimensional anomaly confirmed. You will submit to containment and study." The students looked at Naruto in confusion. "Friend of yours?" Bakugo asked sarcastically, palms already sparking with explosive power. "Definitely not," Naruto replied, mind racing. How did this person know who he was? More importantly, how did they know about his dimensional displacement? Aizawa appeared, capture weapon ready. "Students, fall back. This is not a drill. The boy comes with us," the hovering figure stated. "Interference will not be tolerated." Multiple drones appeared, surrounding the courtyard and creating a perimeter barrier of energy. Naruto stepped forward, placing himself between the attacker and his classmates. "Who are you?" "Dimensional arbiters. We maintain reality's boundaries." The figure descended slightly. "Your presence here violates natural law. You must be contained." Naruto felt Kurama stirring within him, the fox's consciousness rising to alertness. "Careful, Kit," came the Nine-Tails voice. "That technology, it's designed to disrupt dimensional energy. It could target our chakra specifically." "I'm not going anywhere," Naruto called back. "And I'm not letting you harm anyone here." The figure sighed audibly. "Protocol dictates we attempt non-destructive extraction first. Unfortunate that you resist." Energy gathered around the attacker's hands. Naruto prepared to dodge, but instead of targeting him, the figure fired at the building behind the students. Stone and glass exploded outward. Without hesitation, Naruto formed hand signs. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. 20 clones appeared, leaping to intercept falling debris before it could harm anyone. The real Naruto charged toward the attacker, chakra focused in his feet to launch him skyward. "Interesting," the figure noted clinically. "Dodging Naruto's initial strike, your energy manifestation is even more adaptable than our readings suggested." "I've got a lot more where that came from," Naruto replied, twisting in midair to avoid a counterattack. Shadow clone jutsu. More clones appeared, surrounding the hovering assailant. They attacked in coordinated waves, forcing the figure to defend from multiple angles. Below, pro heroes had arrived and were evacuating students while contending with the drones. Uraraka touched several, making them weightless and allowing Asui to bat them away with her tongue. Todoroki created ice barriers to shield classmates from energy blasts. The hovering attacker dispatched Naruto's clones efficiently, movements precise and calculated. Your techniques are fascinating but predictable. We've studied dimensional variance extensively. Naruto landed on a rooftop, assessing options. His chakra was stronger than when he'd first arrived, but still not at full capacity. Using the Nine Tails power risked drawing even more unwanted attention. Why target me now? He called, stalling while forming a strategy. Why not when I first arrived? Confirmation required observation, the figure replied. And your interaction with this world's energy systems needed documentation. While they spoke, Naruto subtly created a clone that transformed into a small piece of debris. The disguised clone inched closer to the attacker. So now what? You take me to a lab and dissect me. Crude, but essentially accurate. Your physical composition and energy channels must be understood if we're to prevent further breaches. The disguised clone had positioned itself directly beneath the hovering figure. Naruto made his move, charging forward as a distraction while the sea Lone transformed back and grabbed the attacker's ankles. Surprised, the figure looked down, exactly as Naruto had anticipated. He leapt upward, chakra swirling in his palm. Not enough for a full Rasengan, but sufficient to disrupt the attacker's flight systems. Energy spike detected, the figure exclaimed, trying to break free from the clone's grip. Naruto's attack connected with the figure's chest, spiraling energy tearing into the high-tech suit. Systems sparked and failed, and both the attacker and Naruto plummeted toward the ground. Naruto twisted in midair, ready to land safely, when nothing unexpected happened. A wave of zero gravity enveloped him, slowing his descent. Looking down, he saw Uraraka with arms outstretched, fingers splayed. "I've got you," she called, concentration evident on her face as she controlled his fall. The attacker wasn't so fortunate, crashing hard onto the courtyard. Before they could recover, Aizawa's capture weapon wrapped around them, binding arms and legs. Naruto landed gently, giving Uraraka a grateful nod before approaching the restrained figure. Other heroes surrounded them, quirks ready if the attacker attempted to escape. "Now," Aizawa said coldly, "answers." The figure's damaged visor flickered, then went dark. With a mechanical hiss, the helmet retracted, revealing a surprisingly ordinary-looking woman with short gray hair. "You've made a terrible mistake," she said calmly, despite her situation. "The anomaly must be contained. Reality itself depends on it." Nezu approached, his small stature belying the authority in his voice. "You attacked my students on school grounds. Your concerns about reality will need to be expressed from detention." "You don't understand," the woman insisted. "His presence creates cascading dimensional instabilities. Our readings show micro-fractures already forming around him." Naruto frowned. "What are you talking about? Matter from one dimension cannot simply exist in another without consequences. The universe seeks balance." Her eyes fixed on Naruto with scientific detachment. "You're a walking dimensional tear, and you're getting stronger. The more your power adapts to this world, the greater the strain on the barriers between realities." Police arrived to take custody of the attacker, but her words lingered in Naruto's mind. Was he inadvertently damaging this world just by being here? Uraraka approached as the courtyard was secured and cleanup began. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," Naruto answered automatically, then amended. "Actually, I don't know." She tilted her head. What was she talking about? Dimensions and anomalies. Naruto looked around. Most students were being directed back inside, but Aizawa stood nearby, clearly listening. "It's complicated," Naruto said. "And maybe not something I should talk about with so many people around." Uraraka seemed about to press further when Aizawa interrupted. "Uzumaki, principal's office, now. Uraraka, rejoin your class." With an apologetic glance at Uraraka, Naruto followed Aizawa. Whatever came next, secrets would be harder to maintain. The dimensional arbiters had made sure of that. Chapter 1 end. Chapter 2. The Fox and the Academy. Naruto sat in Principal Nezu's office for the second time in as many weeks, though under significantly more troubling circumstances. The attack had left parts of the campus damaged, students shaken, and worst of all, publicly exposed questions about Naruto's origins. Across the desk, Nezu's usual cheerful demeanor had given way to calculated assessment. Beside him stood Aizawa, arms crossed, while All Might, in his weakened form, leaned against the wall. The dimensional arbiters, Nezu mused, tapping a small paw against a tablet displaying information about the attackers. According to preliminary intelligence, they're a covert research organization obsessed with multiverse theory. Until today, they were considered harmless theoreticians. Clearly, they've advanced beyond theory, Aizawa remarked dryly. Naruto shifted uncomfortably. She said I'm causing damage just by being here. Is that true? Nezu and All Might exchanged glances. We can't be certain, Nezu replied carefully. The science of dimensional travel isn't exactly established curriculum. But you're worried it might be, Naruto pressed. All Might coughed slightly. Young Uzumaki, you've demonstrated Reborn abilities that follow different rules than quirks. If your presence truly does create these, what did she call them? Microfractures, Aizawa supplied. Yes, those. If they exist, we need to understand the implications. Naruto felt a familiar sensation of being a problem rather than a person, a feeling that had followed him throughout childhood as Konoha's Jinchuriki. So what now? You hand me over to them. Absolutely not, Nezu stated firmly, surprising Naruto. Whatever the scientific considerations, their methods were unacceptable. You're under our protection as a student of UA. Besides, Aizawa added, if there are dimensional concerns, arbitrary detainment hardly seems the rational solution. Naruto relaxed slightly. Thank you. I swear I didn't know I could be causing problems. Which brings us to our next point, Nezu continued. Your background story is now compromised. Students witnessed the attack and heard the attacker's claims. Questions will arise. I could transfer to a different school, Naruto suggested reluctantly, though the thought of leaving the few connections he'd begun to form pained him. Running solves nothing, Aizawa countered. If you cause dimensional instability, changing your location won't help. All Might straightened. I believe we need a modified approach to young Uzumaki's situation. A more transparent one, at least with key personnel. Nezu nodded. I agree. Selected staff and perhaps certain students should be briefed appropriately. Attempting to maintain complete secrecy is no longer viable. Wait, Naruto interjected. You want me to tell people I'm from another dimension? They'll think I'm crazy. After witnessing your abilities, Aizawa raised an eyebrow. They've seen enough to consider it plausible. All Might approached Naruto, placing a bony hand on his shoulder. The path of secrecy is a lonely one, young man. I speak from experience. Sometimes, trustworthy allies who know the whole truth are your greatest asset. Naruto considered this. In his world, he'd carried the burden of the Nine Tails alone for years, and that isolation had nearly broken him. It wasn't until people like Iruka, Kakashi, and his friends had learned the truth and accepted him anyway that he'd found his strength. All right, he conceded, but I get to decide who knows the full story. Nezu smiled. A reasonable compromise. Now, regarding your academic situation, Naruto grimaced. The past week of classes had proven challenging in ways that fighting never could. Modern mathematics, literature, and science were entirely foreign to him. Your performance in tactical training and combat scenarios has been exemplary, Nezu acknowledged. However, your academic assessments are concerning. I was never much for traditional schooling, Naruto admitted. Back home, ninja training focused on practical skills. Nevertheless, a hero must understand the society they protect, Aizawa stated, including its laws, history, and scientific principles. Naruto sighed, anticipating a lecture, but All Might intervened. Perhaps a tutor could help bridge the educational gap. Someone who excels academically but could so benefit from Uzumaki's tactical experience. Nezu's eyes brightened. An excellent suggestion. I believe I know just the student. You want me to tutor the transfer student? Momo Yaoyorozu repeated, blinking in surprise as she sat across from Aizawa in the faculty office. You're the top academic performer in Class 1A, Aizawa stated matter-of-factly. And your quirk requires extensive knowledge to function optimally. Well, yes, but, Momo hesitated. Uzumaki-san seems rather unconventional. Aizawa's expression remained impassive. He has significant gaps in his education due to his background. However, his combat expertise and strategic thinking are exceptional. Consider this an exchange. You help with academics, he assists with tactical application. Momo straightened. Put that way, the arrangement seemed mutually beneficial. I understand. When would we begin? Immediately. 3 sessions weekly, to be conducted in the library or training facilities as appropriate. Aizawa slid a folder across the desk. These are his current assessment results. Review them to identify priority areas. Momo opened the folder, eyes widening at the stark contrast between academic and practical evaluations. His combat scores are among the highest in our class, but these academic results are abysmal, Aizawa finished bluntly. Hence the intervention. She nodded, already mentally organizing a study plan. I'll do my best, sensei. One more thing, Aizawa added as she rose to leave. Uzumaki has certain circumstances that make his situation unique. He may share details at his discretion. If he does, that information is to be treated as confidential. Understood. Momo nodded, curiosity piqued but professional enough not to press for details. Of course. As she left the faculty office, Momo spotted the subject of their discussion in the hallway, staring confusedly at his phone. Naruto was tapping the screen with increasing frustration, muttering under his breath. Need assistance, she offered, approaching him. Naruto looked up, embarrassment flashing across his features. Oh, hey, Yaoyorozu. This thing keeps asking for an update, but won't tell me what it wants to know. Momo stifled a laugh, taking the phone. It's not asking for information, it needs a software update. Here, she navigated through the settings with practiced ease, initiating the download. It should work properly once this completes. Thanks, Naruto said with genuine gratitude. Technology here is complicated. Where you're from, I assume it's different. A shadow crossed his face. Very. He studied her for a moment, then asked, did Aizawa-sensei talk to you about tutoring? Just now, actually. I've agreed to help. Naruto's expression brightened. That's great. Though I should warn you, I'm pretty hopeless with books and formulas. And I've been informed you excel at practical application, she countered. Perhaps we can structure our sessions to benefit us both. Before Naruto could respond, Uraraka appeared around the corner, practically bouncing with energy. Naruto, there you are. Hey, Uraraka, he greeted, his smile widening in a way Momo couldn't help but notice. Uraraka glanced between them. Oh, sorry, am I interrupting something? Not at all, Momo assured her. We were discussing tutoring arrangements. I'll be helping Uzumaki-san with his academics. That's perfect, Uraraka exclaimed. Yaoyorozu is super smart. She helped me with calculus last semester. Her attention returned to Naruto. Anyway, everyone's meeting at the dorm common area. Hiroshima suggested we order food and hang out since classes are cancelled for the rest of the day. Sounds fun, Naruto replied, then glanced at Momo. You coming? The invitation surprised her slightly. Social gatherings weren't typically her priority, but something about Naruto's earnest expression made refusal difficult. I suppose I could join for a while. They walked together toward the dormitory. Uraraka enthusiastically recounting reactions to the morning's attack. Everyone's talking about how you took down that flying attacker, she told Naruto. Especially that swirly energy thing you used. Was that part of your quirk? Naruto hesitated, clearly choosing his words carefully. Something like that. It's called the Rasengan, or a mini version of it, anyway. When I'm at full strength, it's much more powerful. It looked like pure rotational energy, Momo observed. The applications for such a technique must be extensive. My teacher created it, Naruto said, a hint of pride mixed with sadness in his voice. Took him 3 years to perfect. Taught it to me when I was 13. Your teacher must be incredible, Uraraka remarked. Naruto's expression shifted subtly. He was. The past tense hung in the air for a moment before Uraraka changed the subject, sensing the emotional weight. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you. Midoriya has been theorizing about your quirk non-stop. He's filled 3 pages in his notebook already. Naruto laughed. That guy's intense about quirk analysis, huh? You have no idea, Uraraka confirmed. He's probably going to bombard you with questions tonight. They arrived at the common area to find most of Class 1A already gathered. Conversation momentarily paused as they entered, several students glancing at Naruto with renewed interest after the morning's events. Midoriya approached immediately, notebook in hand. Uzumaki, I've been analyzing what we saw today. Your energy manifestation seems to operate on completely different principles than emitter-type quirks. Give him space, Deku, Uraraka chided gently. He just got here. Oh, sorry, Midoriya apologized, though his eyes still gleamed with analytical excitement. Naruto smiled easily. It's fine, but maybe we can talk quirk theory later. I'm starving. Food's on the way, Kirishima called from the couch. Hey, Uzumaki, come tell us about that crazy takedown. As Naruto joined the group, recounting a carefully edited version of the battle, Momo observed his social dynamics with interest. Despite being a recent transfer with mysterious circumstances, he integrated seamlessly with their class. There was something magnetic about his presence, an authenticity that drew people in despite the obvious secrets he kept. The evening progressed with food, conversation, and eventually games. Through it all, Momo noticed two distinct patterns. Uraraka gravitated consistently toward Naruto, finding reasons to sit nearby or engage him directly, while Bakugo watched him with intense, suspicious scrutiny. During a particularly heated round of video games which Naruto fumbled through with endearing confusion, Momo found herself seated beside Todoroki, who had remained characteristically quiet throughout the gathering. You're observing him carefully, Todoroki noted without preamble. Momo tensed slightly. I'm to be his tutor. Understanding his baseline knowledge is important. Todoroki's heterochromatic eyes shifted to where Naruto was laughing as Uraraka tried to explain controller functions. There's more to him than he reveals. I could say the same about many of us. Momo replied diplomatically. True, but our secrets don't typically attract armed attackers to campus. Before Momo could respond, a loud cheer erupted as Uraraka somehow helped Naruto achieve an unlikely victory in the game. His genuine delight at such a simple accomplishment was strangely touching, as if small joys were still novel to him despite his evident combat experience. Whatever his circumstances, Momo found herself saying, I believe his intentions are honorable. Todoroki considered this, then nodded once. We'll see. As the evening wound down, Naruto approached Momo, hands in pockets. So, when do we start these tutoring sessions? Tomorrow after classes. The library should be relatively quiet then. Works for me, he agreed, then added more quietly, thanks for doing this. I know my academic stuff is pretty pathetic. Different educational backgrounds produce different strengths, Momo replied matter-of-factly. I excel at theoretical knowledge but sometimes hesitate in practical application. Perhaps we can learn from each other. A genuine smile spread across his face. I'd like that. The following afternoon found them in a quiet corner of UA's extensive library. Momo had arrived early, organizing materials by subject and difficulty. When Naruto arrived, he surveyed the imposing stack of books with visible dread. We're going to cover all that today. Momo laughed softly. Of course not. These are reference materials for the semester. I've prepared a more reasonable starting point. She indicated a much smaller pile beside her notebook. Naruto sat, shoulders slumping slightly. Let me guess, we're starting with math. Actually, modern history, Momo corrected. Understanding the development of quirk society provides context for other subjects. His expression brightened. That actually sounds interesting. They began with the emergence of quirks, the glowing baby in Qingqing City, the rapid proliferation of abilities worldwide, the resulting social upheaval. Naruto listened with genuine fascination, occasionally asking questions that revealed surprising insight. So before quirks, people here were basically like the civilians in my world, he summarized. Then suddenly, powers appeared randomly, creating chaos until new systems developed around them. Essentially correct, Momo confirmed, impressed by his grasp of the social dynamics. The transition was turbulent, hence the rise of vigilantism, followed by regulated hero work. In my world, chakra was systematized thousands of years ago, Naruto explained. The sage who first taught humans to use it hoped it would connect people. Instead, it mostly became weaponized. Momo tilted her head. Your world has a long history with these abilities, then. Yeah, the 5 great nations, hidden villages, the whole ninja system, all built around controlling and utilizing chakra. A shadow crossed his face. Led to a lot of wars. And you were a soldier in these wars. Naruto met her gaze directly. I fought in the 4th grade ninja war. That's how I ended up here. Momo sensed the significance of this admission. Aizawa-sensei mentioned you might share certain details at your discretion. Yeah, well, Naruto glanced around, confirming they were alone, then lowered his voice. After what happened yesterday, keeping everything secret seems pointless. That dimensional arbiter wasn't wrong about me. You're truly from another dimension, Momo stated rather than asked, her analytical mind processing the implications. That explains the discrepancies in your abilities and knowledge. You believe me, just like that. The evidence supports your claim, she replied pragmatically. Your techniques operate on principles inconsistent with quirk science. Your educational gaps include basic knowledge any child in our world would possess. And most convincingly, an organization apparently dedicated to dimensional research attacked you specifically. Naruto stared at her for a moment, then chuckled. You know, in my world, people usually freak out more when they learn crazy stuff. An emotional response wouldn't alter the facts, Momo said, though. She couldn't deny her internal fascination. Though I admit, interdimensional travel raises countless scientific questions. I don't understand it myself, Naruto confessed. I was fighting to seal a dimensional rift in my world. Next thing I knew, I woke up here with most of my power drained. Fascinating. Momo's mind raced with implications. If your presence truly causes these micro-fractures the attacker mentioned, there could be measurable disturbances in local space-time. I wonder if... Whoa, Naruto interrupted, holding up his hands. One tutor session and you already sound like the dimensional science people. Momo blushed slightly. I apologize. Academic curiosity is my default response to new information. It's fine, Naruto assured her. Actually, it's nice having Somio. Nay, talk about this stuff clinically instead of treating me like I'm dangerous. Are you dangerous? I mean, Naruto's expression turned serious. I don't want to be. But where I'm from, I had enough power to level mountains when pushed. And that power is slowly returning. Instead of fear, Momo felt intensified curiosity. Then understanding it becomes even more crucial, both for academic support and practical safety. For the remainder of their session, they alternated between modern history lessons and Naruto explaining basic principles of chakra. While his academic knowledge was indeed limited, his ability to explain complex energy manipulation revealed a deep, intuitive understanding of his abilities. So chakra requires both physical and spiritual energy, Momo summarized as they concluded. And these hand signs you use help shape and direct it. Exactly. Though really skilled ninja can perform techniques with fewer signs or even none. Similar to how I've improved my creation process, Momo noted. Initially, I required extensive concentration for each item. Now, common creations are nearly instantaneous. Your quirk is amazing, Naruto said sincerely. Creating anything from your body. That would be considered an advanced Kekkei Genkei, a bloodline limit, in my world. The compliment warmed her unexpectedly. Coming from someone with his abilities, the admiration felt particularly meaningful. Thank you, though it has significant limitations. All powers do, Naruto replied with the confidence of experience. The trick is working around them. As they packed up their materials, Momo found herself already planning their next session. I believe we should continue with history, then incorporate basic scientific principles. Your chakra seems to operate on energy conservation principles similar to our physics. Whatever you think is best, Naruto agreed, shouldering his bag. This wasn't nearly as painful as I expected. High praise indeed, Momo remarked with amusement. Same time Thursday. It's a date, Naruto replied casually, then immediately backpedaled. I mean, not a date. A study date, or not even that, just, you know, a scheduled meeting between. I understood your meaning. Momo assured him, hiding her amusement at his sudden flustering. Though your reaction suggests interesting cultural connotations regarding dates in your dimension. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, embarrassed. Yeah, well, I should go. Training with All Might in 20 minutes. As he hurried away, Momo gathered her remaining materials, mind still processing everything she'd learned. An interdimensional traveler with energy manipulation beyond quirk science, slowly regaining godlike powers while adjusting to an entirely new world. And somehow, his greatest concern had been accidentally implying their tutoring session was romantic. Fascinating indeed. 2 weeks passed in a rhythm of classes, training, and tutoring sessions. Naruto's academy. C performance improved gradually under Momo's guidance, while his combat abilities strengthened more rapidly, a fact that both impressed and concerned the faculty supervising his progress. During hero training one afternoon, All Might paired students for sparring matches, deliberately assigning Naruto against Bakugo. A true test of your adaptability, young Uzumaki. The symbol of peace announced with his characteristic grin. And for young Bakugo, an opportunity to face unfamiliar techniques. The two faced off in the training ground, Bakugo's hands crackling with suppressed explosions while Naruto stood relaxed, hands in pockets. Been waiting for this, Bakugo growled. Time to see if you're really as good as everyone thinks. I'm probably better, Naruto replied with a grin, deliberately baiting him. The taunt worked. Bakugo launched forward with an explosion-propelled leap, right hand cocked back for his signature opening move. Die. Instead of dodging, Naruto simply raised one hand, catching Bakugo's explosive blow directly. The force pushed him back several feet, leaving skid marks on the ground, but he remained standing, hand smoking slightly but uninjured. The class watched in stunned silence. Even All Might's perpetual smile faltered momentarily. What the hell? Bakugo snarled, jumping back. That should have at least broken your arm. Naruto examined his palm casually. I reinforced it with chakra. Basic defensive technique where I'm from. Bakugo's eyes narrowed dangerously. So you've been holding back this whole time. Haven't we all? Naruto countered, dropping into a fighting stance. Training isn't about going all out. It's about improving. Screw that. Bakugo launched a series of explosive attacks, each more powerful than the last. Show me what you can really do. Naruto weaved through the barrage with fluid movements, his speed visibly increasing as he adjusted to Bakugo's rhythm. When he counterattacked, it was with precise strikes targeting Bakugo's balance points rather than attempting to match his explosive power. From the sidelines, Midoriya watched with analytical intensity. Amazing. He's using minimal force but maximum efficiency, exploiting the recovery time after each explosion. It's like he's fought explosion quirks before, Uraraka added, not taking her eyes off the match. Momo, standing nearby, thought of what Naruto had told her about his world's wars. He likely has combat experience against diverse abilities. The sparring match escalated as Bakugo grew increasingly frustrated with his inability to land a solid hit. His explosions became larger, more destructive, pushing the boundaries of what was considered safe for training. Young Bakugo, All Might called in warning. Remember the parameters. Bakugo didn't hear or chose to ignore the caution. Howitzer impact, he roared, spiraling upward with gathered explosive force. Naruto's expression shifted from playful to serious. As Bakugo descended with what would be a devastating attack, Naruto's hands formed rapid signs. Earth style. Mud wall. He called out, slamming his palm to the ground. A solid earthen barrier erupted upward, intercepting Bakugo's attack. The explosion was massive, shattering the wall and sending debris flying across the training ground. When the dust settled, both combatants stood facing each other, Bakugo breathing evilly while Naruto looked barely winded. That wasn't a normal quirk application, Bakugo stated, eyes narrowed. You literally created matter. Not exactly, Naruto replied. I manipulated existing elements. The earth was already there, I just reshaped it. All Might stepped between them. An impressive display from both of you. But that's enough for today. We're not finished, Bakugo protested. Yes, you are, All Might insisted. His tone brooking no argument despite his smile. Training is about control as much as power, young Bakugo. As the class dispersed to other training exercises, Naruto approached Bakugo, who stood scowling at the destroyed training area. Good fight, Naruto offered. Bakugo glared at him. You weren't fighting seriously. Neither were you, Naruto countered. If you had been, half the training ground would be gone. This observation seemed to surprise Bakugo. You could tell I was holding back. Of course, we're in school, not a death match. Naruto gestured to the destruction. Though you pushed it at the end there. Bakugo studied him with slightly less hostility. That earth technique. It wasn't listed in your quirk file. I've got a few tricks not in the file, Naruto admitted. Grew up fighting, remember. HMPH. Next time, no holding back. Bakugo turned to leave, then added over his shoulder. You're still nowhere near my level, but you're not completely useless. Coming from Bakugo, this was practically effusive praise. Naruto grinned as the explosive student stalked away. That went better than expected, observed Kirishima, approaching from the sidelines. Usually after being matched like that, Bakugo destroys training equipment for hours. He's not so bad, Naruto replied. Reminds me of a friend from home. All pride and anger on the outside, but actually pretty reliable. That's exactly what I keep telling everyone. Kirishima exclaimed, delighted to find someone who shared his view of Bakugo. As training concluded, and students headed for the locker rooms, All Might pulled Naruto aside. A word, young Uzumaki. Naruto tensed, expecting criticism for the earth jutsu he'd performed on instinct. Sorry about the wall thing. I reacted without thinking. Actually, I wanted to commend your restraint, All Might replied, reverting to his true form once they were alone. Young Bakugo was deliberately pushing for a more extreme response. I've dealt with his type before, Naruto said with a shrug. They need to test boundaries. All Might studied him thoughtfully. You mentioned being trained since childhood. I am beginning to understand what that truly means in your case. Ninja aren't like heroes, Naruto explained carefully. We're trained as weapons first, peacekeepers second. I was lucky to have teachers who emphasized protection over power. And yet, power you have in abundance, All Might noted. Your chakra reserves have increased significantly since your arrival. Recovery Girl's measurements how nearly double the energy signature compared to your initial readings. Naruto nodded. I've felt it. Kurama's awakening more too. The fox entity, All Might recalled. Is that concerning? Not really. Kurama and I are partners now. Naruto smiled slightly, though he's still grumpy about being stuck here. I see. All Might coughed slightly, blood speckling his handkerchief. Well, continue your excellent progress. But perhaps warn me before unveiling new techniques that restructure the training grounds. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Yeah, sorry about that. As he jogged to catch up with his classmates, Naruto felt a familiar stirring in his mind. That explosive brat reminds me of the Uchiha, Kurama's voice rumbled, deeper and clearer than it had been since their arrival. You're awake, Naruto observed mentally, feeling better, marginally. This world's energy is strange but not incompatible with chakra. I've been absorbing it while you play school child. Any insights about getting home? Naruto asked, hope rising despite himself. None that would please you, the fox replied grimly. The dimensional barriers are substantial. Breaking through again would require more power than we currently possess, and the attempt could destroy both you and this reality. Naruto's spirits fell. So we're still stuck. For now. But there's something else. Kurama's presence seemed to focus. I've sensed energy fluctuations recently. Similar to our own arrival but smaller. I don't think we're the only things that crossed over. This revelation stopped Naruto mid-step. Others from our world, possibly, or perhaps objects, techniques, chakra residue. The initial breach may have weakened the barriers in multiple locations. I need to tell Nezu and the others, Naruto decided. Carefully, Kit, Kurama warned. Not everyone here has your best interests at heart. Those arbiters won't be the only ones interested in dimensional anomalies. With this unsettling thought, the fox's presence receded, leaving Naruto standing alone in the hallway with troubling new possibilities to consider. That evening, Naruto sat cross-legged on his dorm room floor, attempting to meditate. His conversation with Kurama had left him restless, and recent training sessions had confirmed his chakra was indeed recovering faster than expected. He needed to center himself, to reconnect with the energy flow that had always come so naturally in his own world. Eyes closed, breath steady, he gradually sank into a meditative state, only to be startled by a knock at his door. Naruto, you in there? Uraraka's voice pulled him back to full awareness. Rising quickly, he opened the door to find her holding a small box. Sorry to bother you, she said with a smile. But I noticed you didn't come to dinner. So I thought maybe you were studying and lost track of time. The consideration touched him. Thanks. I was actually meditating. Part of my quirk control. Oh, Uraraka looked embarrassed. I totally interrupted, didn't I? It's fine, he assured her, genuinely pleased by her presence. I could use a break anyway. She held out the box. Katsudon. Sato made it for everyone. And it's really good. Naruto accepted the food gratefully, realizing he was indeed hungry. Want to come in? Or is that against dorm rules or something? We're allowed to visit each other until curfew, she clarified. But I don't want to impose if you're busy. Not at all. He stepped aside, gesturing her in. Fair warning though, I haven't decorated much. Uraraka entered, glancing around the sparse room. Standard dorm furniture, minimal personal items, and a few training weapons laid neatly on the desk were the only indications someone lived there. It's very tidy, she offered diplomatically. Naruto laughed, setting the food on his desk. It's empty, you mean? I didn't exactly bring luggage when I arrived. Right. She sat on the edge of his bed while he took the desk chair. Can I ask you something? You don't have to answer if it's too personal. Sure, Naruto replied, opening the food box. The aroma of fried pork and egg over rice made his stomach growl appreciatively. That person who attacked, she said things about you being from another dimension. Uraraka watched his face carefully. Is that true? Naruto paused, chopsticks hovering over the meal. He'd already told Momo, and Nezu had suggested selective transparency. More importantly, something about Uraraka's direct, honest approach made him want to be equally forthright. Yeah, he admitted finally. It's true. He expected surprise, disbelief, perhaps even fear. Instead, Uraraka's eyes widened with what looked like wonder. I knew it. Well, I didn't know, but I suspected something like that. She leaned forward eagerly. Your abilities are nothing like quirks, and you're constantly confused by normal technology, and sometimes you use weird expressions no one's ever heard before. Naruto blinked. You noticed all that? Of course. I'm training to be a hero. Observation is important. She hesitated, then asked more softly, what's it like? Your world. The question was so genuine, so free of judgment, that Naruto found himself answering openly. Between bites of katsudon, which was delicious, though not ramen, he described the 5 great nations, the hidden villages, the ninja system, and his own role as both Konoha shinobi and Jinchuriki of the 9 tails. Uraraka listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking clarifying questions but never expressing doubt. When he mentioned his childhood isolation due to housing the 9 tails, her expression softened with empathy. That must have been so lonely, she said quietly. It was, Naruto acknowledged. But I found people who accepted me eventually. Kind of like here, actually. He met her gaze. You're taking this really well. Most people would think I'm crazy. After everything we've seen with quirks, dimensions don't seem that far-fetched. She smiled. Besides, I can tell when people are lying, and you're definitely telling the truth. Their conversation continued as Naruto finished his meal, the initial subject expanding to include their respective childhoods, training experiences, and aspirations. Uraraka spoke of her parents' financial struggles and her desire to support them, while Naruto shared stories of his ninja academy days and early missions with Team 7. So this Sasuke person was your rival? Uraraka asked, now sitting cross-legged on the bed. More than that, he was like my brother, Naruto corrected. Even when he went rogue, I never gave up on bringing him back. We fought on opposite sides for years, but in the end, we stood together. Do you miss them? Your friends back home? The question struck a chord Naruto had been avoiding. Every day, he admitted. But dwelling on it won't help. I have to focus on what's in front of me now. Uraraka's expression turned thoughtful. You're really strong. You know that. Not just your abilities, although those are incredible, but mentally. I'm not sure I could handle being thrown into a completely different world and just adapt. You'd be surprised what you can handle when there's no other choice, Naruto replied. Besides, it helps having people like you make it easier. A slight blush colored her cheeks. I haven't done anything special. You brought me dinner and listened to my interdimensional travel story without calling for psychiatric evaluation. I'd say that's pretty special. She laughed, the sound brightening the room. When you put it that way. The dorm's warning chime sounded, indicating 15 minutes until curfew. Uraraka stood reluctantly. I should go. Thanks for telling me all this. I promise I won't share it without your permission. I trust you, Naruto said simply, walking her to the door. She paused in the doorway. If you ever need someone to talk to about home, or anything really. I'm a pretty good listener. I've noticed, Naruto replied warmly. Good night, Uraraka. Ochaco, she corrected. My friends call me Ochaco. Good night, Ochaco, he amended, liking how the name felt. After she left, Naruto returned to his meditation position, finding his center much more easily than before. Somewhere in his consciousness, he felt Kurama's rumbling amusement. Making friends already, Kit. Shut up, Fox, Naruto replied without heat. It's called building allies. Is that what they call it in this dimension? The Nine Tails teased. Naruto ignored the comment, Foku. Sing instead on the warm feeling that had settled in his chest. A feeling that had nothing to do with chakra and everything to do with connection. The next morning brought a school-wide announcement. UA would host a special training exhibition, inviting third-year students to demonstrate advanced techniques for the first years. The event would provide valuable observation experience while allowing the younger students to understand their potential growth trajectory. The Big Three will be participating. Midoriya exclaimed during homeroom, practically vibrating with excitement. We'll get to see Mirio's phasing, Tamaki's manifestations, and Nejire's wave techniques up close. Big Three, Naruto whispered to Ochaco, who sat nearby. The top students in UA, she explained. They're basically already pro-level. Aizawa cleared his throat, silencing the class chatter. This is an observation and analysis exercise, not a spectator sport. You'll be required to submit detailed reports on the techniques demonstrated and their potential applications. A collective groan rose from several students. Furthermore, Aizawa continued, unmoved by their response, select first-year student. S will be invited to participate in controlled sparring with the third years. This announcement changed the mood instantly, excitement replacing disappointment. Ribbit, who do you think will be selected? Asui wondered aloud. Obviously the strongest, Bakugo declared, which means me. Strength alone isn't the only criterion, Iida pointed out. Technical skill, adaptability, and quirk compatibility would logically factor into the selection. Naruto listened with mild interest, not expecting to be chosen. As a transfer with unusual abilities, he assumed the faculty would keep him from such public demonstrations. To his surprise, when Aizawa listed the participants at the end of class, his name was among them. Midoriya, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Uzumaki will represent Class 1A, the teacher announced. Prepare accordingly. The exhibition is tomorrow afternoon. As they filed out of the classroom, Midoriya approached Naruto, eyes shining with enthusiasm. This is incredible. We'll actually spar with the Big Three. Yeah, great, Naruto replied distractedly, wondering why Nezu would approve his participation after the Dimensional Arbiter's incident. His answer came during his scheduled training session with All Might, who arrived at the specialized facility accompanied by Principal Nezu. Young Uzumaki, All Might greeted in his powered form, though Naruto had noticed the hero could maintain it for increasingly shorter periods. Ready for today's control exercises. Actually, Naruto began, I wanted to ask about tomorrow's exhibition. Why include me when we're trying to avoid attention to my unique situation? Nezu stepped forward. A calculated decision, Mr. Uzumaki. After analyzing the Dimensional Arbiter's approach, we believe their strategy relied on your isolation. Targeting you specifically is an anomaly. By integrating you prominently into UA's student body, we make you less attractive as an isolated research subject. Hide in plain sight, Naruto questioned skeptically. Precisely, Nezu confirmed. Additionally, the exhibition provides controlled circumstances to document your abilities officially. The more transparent your quirk appears within our system, the less mysterious, and therefore less tempting, you become to fringe organizations. All Might nodded. It's similar to my own public presence. By being visible and officially sanctioned, you gain a layer of protection. Naruto considered this. The strategy made sense, though it felt counterintuitive. So what am I allowed to show tomorrow? Techniques consistent with your established cover, Nezu replied. Shadow clones, transformation, basic elemental manipulation, and physical enhancement are all documented in your file now. Avoid sage techniques or the Nine Tails power unless absolutely necessary. Got it. Naruto rolled his shoulders. So, today's training. All Might grinned. Ah yes, we'll be working on chakra output control. Recovery Girl has developed sensors to measure energy expenditure, which should help you calibrate techniques for this world. The training session proved intense but productive. Naruto discovered that his chakra, while growing stronger, interacted differently with this world's physical laws. Techniques that once required precise amounts of energy now needed recalibration. By session's end, he'd adjusted several basic jutsu to function more efficiently. Excellent progress, All Might exclaimed, finally reverting to his true form as his time limit expired. Your adaptability is remarkable. Had good teachers, Naruto replied modestly, toweling sweat from his face. And lots of practice. As they prepared to leave, Nezu held up a paw. One more matter, Mr. Uzumaki. The Nine Tails mentioned sensing other dimensional anomalies. Naruto nodded, remembering his conversation with Kurama. Nothing specific yet, just energy fluctuations similar to when we arrived. Most concerning, Nezu mused. I've initiated discrete monitoring for unusual energy signatures nationwide. If others have indeed crossed over, we need to locate them promptly. Not everything from my world is friendly, Naruto warned. Some techniques and creatures could be extremely dangerous here. All the more reason for preparedness, Nezu agreed. Now, rest well for tomorrow's exhibition. I expect it will be quite educational, for everyone involved. The following afternoon, UA's largest training facility buzzed with anticipation. Classes had been suspended to allow all students to observe the exhibition, with faculty stationed throughout to maintain order and provide commentary. Naruto stood with the other selected first years in a preparation area, stretching while Midoriya nervously muttered analysis to himself. Tagada's permeation allows intangibility but requires precise timing for counterattacks. Amajiki's manifestations depend on prior consumption. Hato's waves increase in power proportional to spiral rotation. You okay there? Naruto asked, concerned by Midoriya's increasing intensity. The green-haired student looked up, momentarily startled. Oh, yes, just reviewing what I know about the third year's abilities. You'll overthink yourself into paralysis. Bakugo scoffed from nearby. Just fight. Preparation is essential, Todoroki countered calmly, adjusting his support items. Before the debate could continue, the door opened to reveal three students in third-year uniforms. The first was a tall, muscular blonde with an unwavering smile. Beside him stood a shy-looking young man with pointed ears, and complete. In the trio was a blue-haired girl whose energy seemed barely contained as she bounced on her toes. Hello, first years, the blonde greeted enthusiastically. I'm Mirio Tagada. This is Tamaki Amajiki and Nejire Hato. We're excited to work with you today. Are you really as strong as everyone says? Nejire asked, immediately floating closer to examine them. Oh, you have green hair, and you have a burn scar. And you, she stopped in front of Naruto, eyes widening slightly. Your energy feels weird. What's your quirk? Can you make those facial markings change? Do they serve a purpose? Naruto blinked at the rapid-fire questions. Nejire, give them space, Mirio laughed good-naturedly. Save the analysis for the training ground. I want to die, Tamaki mumbled, turning to face the wall. So many people watching. Mirio clapped his hands. Don't mind him. Stage fright. Now, here's how this will work. We'll demonstrate our abilities first, then engage in one-on-one sparring. The focus is technique and adaptation, not victory. Speak for yourself, Bakugo growled. Mirio's smile never faltered. Confidence. I like it. Just remember, we've had 2 more years of training than you. There's no shame in learning from defeat. The exhibition began with individual demonstrations. The crowd watched in awe as Mirio phased through solid objects. Tamaki transformed his limbs into various animal appendages. And Nejire generated powerful spiral energy waves that carved through training dummies. Naruto observed with particular interest. Each of the third years showed mastery beyond their quirks, tactical awareness, economy of movement, and split-second decision-making that reminded him of Jonin-level ninja. "They're incredible," Midoriya whispered beside him. "Yeah," Naruto agreed, "but not unbeatable." The sparring matches were determined by drawing lots. Midoriya would face Tamaki, Bakugo against Mirio, Todoroki versus a different third year, and Naruto paired with Nejire. Midoriya's match came first, a showcase of analytical thinking versus adaptive versatility as he contended with Tamaki's ever-changing manifestations. Though ultimately overwhelmed, Midoriya's performance earned appreciative commentary from the faculty. Bakugo's battle against Mirio proved both spectacular and humbling. Despite explosive power and tactical aggression, he couldn't connect with the phasing third year. Mirio's victory was decisive but respectful, leaving Bakugo fuming but thoughtful. Todoroki fared better against his opponent, his dual quirk providing enough versatility to create a stalemate before time expired. Finally, Naruto stepped onto the training ground to face Nejire. Her blue hair flowed around her as she hovered slightly above the ground, spiral energy pulsing visibly around her hands. "I've been looking forward to this," she called cheerfully. "Your energy readings are super interesting." Naruto dropped into a relaxed fighting stance. "Thanks, I think." "Present," Mike's voice boomed through the facility. Final match of the exhibition. First-year transfer student Naruto Uzumaki versus third-year Nejire Hado. "Begin." Nejire wasted no time, firing a wave of spiral energy directly at Naruto. He dodged sideways, assessing the attack's properties as it carved a groove in the ground where he'd stood. Her energy looked similar to the Rasengan's rotation, he noted mentally. But projected outward. "An interesting coincidence," Kurama commented from within. "This world's powers occasionally parallel our own." Naruto created 3 shadow clones, sending them in different directions to divide Nejire's attention. She laughed delightedly, spinning in midair to track them. "Multiple bodies. So cool. But which one is real?" She fired rapid waves at each clone, dispersing too quickly. The remaining clone and Naruto converged from opposite sides. Nejire hovered higher, generating a spiral barrier around herself that forced both to retreat. "Your clones are solid, not just illusions," she observed, seemingly as interested in analysis as combat. "But they disperse when hit hard enough." "There's more to them than that," Naruto replied, forming hand signs. "Transform." His remaining clone transformed into a giant shuriken, which Naruto grabbed and hurled toward Nejire. She easily deflected it with a wave blast, but the moment her energy touched it, the shuriken transformed back into a clone that grabbed her arm. "Gotcha," the clone declared. "Wow," Nejire exclaimed, genuinely impressed rather than concerned. Transformation and tactical deception. Before the clone could capitalize on the advantage, Nejire pulsed energy through her entire body, dispersing it and propelling herself higher into the arena's airspace. "That was super smart," she called down. "But aerial combat is my specialty." She began generating increasingly powerful wave spirals, forcing Naruto to move constantly to avoid devastation. The training ground cracked under the barrage as faculty erected protective barriers around the spectator areas. "She's strong," Naruto acknowledged internally. "And her aerial position gives her the advantage." "Then change the battlefield," Kurama suggested. "Basic shinobi tactics." Naruto nodded, creating more clones while ducking behind a section of raised terrain. The clones scattered, drawing Nejire's fire while the real Naruto channeled chakra. "Water style. Water wall," he called, slamming his palm onto the ground. Using moisture from the air and ground, he generated a rising column of water beneath Nejire's position. The third year responded instantly, blasting the water column with spiral energy, exactly as Naruto had anticipated. The collision created a massive cloud of mist that enveloped the upper portion of the training ground, obscuring visibility. "Hidden mist technique," Naruto whispered, manipulating the chakra-infused vapor to maintain and expand the coverage. From the spectator stands, visibility dropped dramatically. "What's happening?" students murmured. "Can anyone see?" Within the mist, Naruto moved silently, his shinobi training perfect for this environment. Nejire hovered uncertainly, spiral energy pulsing around her hands to illuminate her immediate surroundings. "This is amazing," she called out, somehow still enthusiastic despite her disadvantage. "You've neutralized my aerial superiority." "But," She suddenly spun, firing a wave that dispelled a clone attempting to approach from behind. I can sense your energy signatures. She's a sensor type, Naruto realized. Similar to an Inuzuka or Hyuga. The mist battle continued, becoming a game of cat and mouse. Nejire would sense and dispatch clones while Naruto gradually maneuvered closer, studying her techniques and response patterns. Finally, he made his move. 4 clones approached simultaneously from different angles while the real Naruto circled beneath. Nejire spun in a complete rotation, firing waves in all directions to I spell the clones, leaving her momentarily open from below. Naruto launched upward, chakra gathered in his palm, not enough for a full Rasengan, but a visible spiral of energy that mimicked Nejire's own technique. Their eyes met in surprise as his hand approached her hovering form. At the last instant, Naruto diverted the attack, dispersing the chakra harmlessly while tapping her shoulder. "Tag," he said with a grin. Nejire blinked, then broke into delighted laughter. "That was amazing. You copied my wave energy. How did you rotate it so perfectly? Was that your quirk adapting to mine? Or was it always similar? Can you teach me how you manipulated the water and mist? Your clones are so cool and solid." So many questions. The mist dissipated as Naruto released the technique, revealing them to the stunned audience. Present Mike's voice broke the silence. Incredible display from both competitors. A technical touch point for Uzumaki, but the battle could have gone either way. As they descended to the ground, Nejire continued her barrage of questions, seemingly more excited about learning Naruto's techniques than concerned about the match outcome. "The way you moved in the mist was so practiced. Like you've trained for years in sensory deprivation. And that spiral energy, it looked just like mine but condensed." "Your waves are really impressive," Naruto replied honestly. "Where I'm from, spiral energy techniques are considered advanced." "Where you're from?" she repeated curiously. "You mean like, another country?" Naruto tensed, realizing his slip. "Something like that." Before Nejire could pursue this line of questioning, Mirio approached, clapping both on the shoulders. "Outstanding match. Nejire, I've never seen someone counter your aerial advantage so effectively." The exhibition concluded with faculty assessments and student discussions. Throughout the remainder of the afternoon, Naruto noticed Nejire watching him with analytical interest rather than her previous excited curiosity, a subtle but significant shift. As students began dispersing toward dormitories, she approached him again. "Your energy signature is different from quirk energy," she stated directly. Her usual bubbly demeanor temporarily subdued. "I've studied energy flow extensively for my wave control, and yours, it doesn't follow the same patterns." Naruto glanced around, ensuring no one else was within earshot. "You've got good instincts." "It's not instincts, it's observable fact," she corrected. "Plus, that dimensional attacker specifically targeted you, and now you're talking about, you're from, having spiral techniques." Her eyes widened. "Wait, are you actually from another dimension?" The direct question caught Naruto off guard. Unlike his conversations with Momo and Ochaco, he hadn't planned to reveal anything to Nejire. "That's a pretty big leap," he hedged. "But I'm right, aren't I?" Her excitement returned. "That's so fascinating. The energy implications alone are incredible. Do different dimensions have different energy conservation principles? Is that why your chakra flows differently?" "Keep your voice down," Naruto warned, glancing around again. "Look, it's complicated and not something I talk about casually." Nejire's expression became surprisingly serious. "I understand. Energy research is my specialty, not just for my quirk, but academically. If your energy truly is extra-dimensional, studying it could advance quirk science by decades." "I'm not a research subject," Naruto stated firmly. "Of course not," she agreed immediately. "But a collaborative exploration, between scientists, that could be mutually beneficial." "I'm not a scientist either," he pointed out. She smiled. "But you are an expert in your own energy system. No one understands your chakra better than you do." Before Naruto could respond, Midoriya approached, eager to discuss the exhibition matches. Nejire stepped back, adding softly, "Think about it. I'm in the 3rd year PHYSICS lab most evenings if you want to talk." As she bounced away, Naruto found himself intrigued despite his reservations. Her approach to his dimensional difference was refreshingly scientific rather than fearful or suspicious. Earth to Naruto. Midoriya waved a hand before his face. You okay? Yeah, sorry, Naruto refocused. Just thinking about the matches. You were incredible. The way you countered Nejire Senpai's aerial advantage was brilliant strategy. Midoriya's analytical enthusiasm kicked in. And that water-to-mist technique creates endless tactical applications. Naruto smiled, allowing himself to be drawn into Midoriya's technical discussion. But in the back of his mind, questions lingered about Nejire's offer. Could scientific understanding of his chakra's interaction with this world actually help him? Or would it simply make him a more valuable target? Late that evening, as most students prepared for bed, Naruto found himself wandering toward the third-year labs. His curiosity about Nejire's research had overcome his caution, at least enough to have a preliminary conversation. The physics lab door was ajar, blue light spilling into the hallway. Peeking inside, Naruto saw Nejire hovering cross-legged above a complex apparatus, spiral energy flowing from her hands into what appeared to be measurement devices. You can come in, she called without looking up. I sensed your energy signature from the hallway. Naruto entered, closing the door behind him. That's impressive range for sensing. I've been practicing, she replied, completing her current test and floating down to meet him. Especially after feeling your unique signature today. It's like learning to recognize a new frequency. The lab contained equipment Naruto couldn't begin to understand, screens displaying waveforms, holographic projections of energy fields, and devices that hummed with power. What exactly are you researching? He asked, gesturing to the setup. Energy transference principles, Nejire explained, eyes lighting up with academic passion. Most quirk science focuses on the biological mechanisms of power production. I'm more interested in what happens after, how RGY converts from biological to physical manifestation. And that applies to dimensional energy how. That's what's fascinating. She pulled up a holographic display showing two waveforms. This is standard quirk energy output, my waves specifically. And this, she tapped a command, bringing up a second pattern. This is a recording of your energy during our match today. Naruto studied the patterns. Even to his untrained eye, the differences were obvious. Where Nejire's energy showed regular oscillation with predictable peaks, his chakra signature appeared more integrated, with multiple FR frequencies overlapping in complex harmony. Your chakra contains at least 3 distinct energy types perfectly synchronized, she observed. I've never seen anything like it. Most quirks produce single-spectrum energy, occasionally dual spectrum for hybrid types like Todoroki. That makes sense, Naruto confirmed. Chakra combines physical energy, spiritual energy, and natural energy in different proportions depending on the technique. Nejire looked like she'd been handed a precious gift. You can consciously control the ratios. That's revolutionary. Quirk energy composition is fixed per individual. Their conversation deepened as Naruto explained basic chakra principles while Nejire related them to this world's quirk science. Despite his limited scientific knowledge, Naruto found he LD articulate concepts through practical examples that Nejire quickly translated into technical understanding. So your shadow clones actually divide your chakra equally among copies, she summarized. After a particularly detailed explanation. That's why they're solid constructs rather than illusions, they contain actual portions of your energy. Exactly, Naruto confirmed. It's why it was considered a forbidden technique originally. Creating too many clones could deplete chakra to fatal levels. Yet you produced 20 during our match without apparent strain, she noted. Your total energy reserve must be enormous. Naruto hesitated before admitting, it's actually still reduced from my normal capacity. When I crossed dimensions, it drained most of my power. I've been slowly recovering, and at full capacity. In my world, I could create thousands of clones simultaneously. Nejire's eyes widened. That would require energy output beyond anything recorded in quirk history. Well, I had help, Naruto said, unconsciously placing a hand over his seal. The 9 tails, Nejire stated, startling him. How do you? Principal Nezu briefed certain students about your situation after the Arbiter's attack. She explained. As an energy specialist with exceptional control, I was included. The information is strictly confidential. Naruto processed this revelation. So you already knew I was from another dimension when you approached me today. I knew the official briefing version, she corrected. But I wanted to hear it from you, to understand the energy implications. From someone who actually experiences it. Her honesty was disarming. Unlike the calculating approach of the dimensional arbiters or even Nezu's pragmatic management, Nejire seemed driven by genuine scientific curiosity without ulterior motives. So what's your actual research goal? Naruto asked. Beyond just understanding chakra, Nejire's expression became more serious. Remember how that arbiter mentioned dimensional instabilities? I've been detecting unusual energy fluctuations around campus since your arrival, subtle, but measurable. She brought up another display showing UA's grounds overlaid with colorful patterns. These represent dimensional stability readings. The blue areas are normal. The yellow and orange indicate microscopic fluctuations in spacetime consistency. Naruto studied the display with growing concern. The colored areas clustered most densely around locations he frequently occupied: his dormitory, training facilities, the classroom. You think I'm causing this? Not intentionally, Nejire clarified. Think of it like bringing a magnet near iron filings. Your mere presence influences the dimensional fabric because you vibrate at a different fundamental frequency. The implications hit Naruto like a physical blow. So the arbiters were right. I am damaging reality. Damaging is too strong a word, Nejire countered quickly. Influencing, yes, and understanding that influence is the first step toward potentially controlling it. Can it be fixed? He asked, the weight of responsibility settling heavily. That's what I'm trying to determine. She gestured to her equipment. If we can map how your chakra interacts with our dimensional frequency, we might develop methods to harmonize them, reducing instability without suppressing your abilities. The scientific approach offered hope where the arbiters had presented only threat. What do you need from me? Controlled energy samples under various conditions, Nejire replied. Different techniques, different emotional states, different chakra compositions. When do we start? We already have. She smiled, gesturing to sensors around the room that had been quietly monitoring their entire conversation. Everything about how your chakra functions helps build the model. Naruto shook his head, impressed despite himself. You're pretty sneaky for a hero student. Science requires data, she replied unapologetically. And speaking of data, would you be willing to demonstrate that spiral technique you almost used during our match? The one similar to my waves. The Rasengan. Naruto considered momentarily, then nodded. Small version only. I don't want to destroy your lab. Perfect. Nejire practically sparkled with excitement. The sensors are calibrated for precise measurements. For the next hour, Naruto demonstrated various chakra techniques while Nejire's equipment recorded the energy patterns. From basic transformations to elemental manipulation, each demonstration yielded ta that visibly excited the blue-haired researcher. The applications are endless, she exclaimed while reviewing preliminary results. The way you restructure energy mid-technique could revolutionize quirk training methodology. As the hour grew late, Naruto prepared to leave. This was actually pretty interesting. I never thought about chakra from a scientific perspective before. We've barely scratched the surface, Nejire assured him, but it's a promising start. Same time tomorrow. I'll try, Naruto agreed. Assuming no more dimensional attackers show up. About that, Nejire's expression grew serious again. The dimensional fluctuations aren't just passively occurring around you anymore. They're increasing in frequency and intensity. Meaning something is actively affecting the dimensional barrier. Beyond your natural influence, she displayed a time lapse of the energy readings. See these spikes? They're too regular, too patterned for natural occurrence. Ill ran down Naruto's spine as he recalled Kurama's warning. Someone's trying to breach through. Or something. That would be my hypothesis, Nejire confirmed. Which makes our research all the more urgent. If another dimensional incursion occurs, it could be much worse than me, Naruto finished grimly. As he left the lab, the weight of this new knowledge pressed upon him. His presence was affecting this world in ways he hadn't fully understood, and now something else might be following his unintentional path. I sensed it too, Kid, Kurama rumbled in his mind. The barriers are thinning, Can you tell what's trying to come through? Naruto asked silently. Not specifically, but it carries chakra signature. Something or someone from our world is seeking a path. Friend or enemy? The fox was silent momentarily. Does it matter? Either would further destabilize this reality. Naruto reached his dormitory, mind racing with implications. As he prepared for bed, his phone buzzed with a message. Opening it, he found a text from an unknown number. Energy spikes detected nationwide. Principal Nezu requests meeting tomorrow 0600. Bring Yaoyorozu and Uraraka. Aizawa, so Nezu was aware of the dimensional developments too. And wanted to include Momo and Ochaco in whatever came next. Things were moving faster than anticipated. Whatever was coming through the weakening dimensional barrier, they needed to be ready. And Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that he was responsible for whatever happened next. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. Echoes of the past. Naruto arrived at Nezu's office at precisely 6 a.m. Surprised to find Ochaco and Momo already waiting outside the door. Both girls looked equally confused by their early summons. Any idea what this is about? Ochaco asked, stifling a yawn. Naruto hesitated. I have some guesses. None of them particularly good. Before he could elaborate, the door swung open to reveal Principal Nezu's small form perched behind his imposing desk. Beside him stood Aizawa and All Might in his diminished state, along with an unexpected addition, Nejire Hado, surrounded by holographic displays showing energy patterns. Ah, good, everyone's here, Nezu greeted, gesturing them inside. Please, take a seat. As they settled into chairs, Naruto noted the tension in the room. The typically cheerful Nejire looked uncharacteristically serious, manipulating data streams with quick gestures. I'll be direct, Nezu began once the door closed. We're facing a potential crisis involving dimensional stability. Momo straightened in her seat. Is concerns Uzumaki-san's interdimensional origins. Ochaco glanced between them. You know about that too. Yaoyorozu has been privy to Mr. Uzumaki's situation for some time, Nezu explained. And based on his recommendation, we've included you as well, Uraraka. Your respective relationships with him may prove invaluable in what comes next. All Might stepped forward. Young Hado, perhaps you should present your findings. Nejire nodded, expanding her holographic display so everyone could see. For the past several weeks, I've been monitoring dimensional energy fluctuations around UA. Initially, these were centered on Naruto, minor ripples in spacetime consistent with his extra-dimensional composition. The display showed a time lapse of colored patterns spreading gradually across a map of Japan. 3 days ago, something changed, Nejire continued. We began detecting coordinated energy spikes at multiple locations nationwide. Each pulse matches a specific frequency, one that resonates with Naruto's chakra signature. Something from my world is trying to come through, Naruto stated grimly. Aizawa crossed his arms. Or someone is attempting to use your energy signature as a template to create artificial breaches. Both theories have merit, Nezu agreed. What concerns us most is the pattern of these breaches. Nejire highlighted several points on the map. These locations correspond to ancient historical sites, places with legends of foreign visitors, or otherworldly powers. We've identified 7 such sites forming a perfect heptagram across Japan. Momo studied the pattern with analytical precision. A ritual formation, or perhaps coordinates in a dimensional mapping system. That's what we need to determine, Nezu replied. Which is why I've assembled this team. Ochaco raised her hand tentatively. I understand why you'd include Naruto and Nejire-senpai, but why Yaoyorozu and me? We're just first-year students. Hardly. Just anything, Nezu countered kindly. Yaoyorozu's encyclopedic knowledge and creation quirk provide invaluable research and adaptation capabilities. And you, Uraraka, possess a unique attunement to gravitational forces, which preliminary data suggests may interact with dimensional boundaries in unexpected ways. Plus, All Might added, you've both demonstrated Naruto's trust, which cannot be overstated when dealing with such sensitive matters. Naruto felt a strange warmth at this acknowledgement. The fact that his judgment was not only respected but factored into strategic decisions represented a level of acceptance he hadn't expected in this new world. So what exactly are we supposed to do? He asked. Nezu smiled. though his eyes remained calculating. A field investigation. The most recent energy spike occurred near Kyoto at a shrine dating back nearly 1,000 years. We need you to investigate discreetly, gather data, and determine whether an actual breach has occurred. We leave today, Aizawa stated, not a question but a command. Official documentation lists this as a special training exercise for problem students requiring additional supervision. Ochaco blinked. We're problem students now. A convenient cover, Nejire explained cheerfully, her typical enthusiasm returning. No one questions Aizawa taking troublemakers for intensive correction. Prepare for 3 days in the field, Nezu instructed. Miss Hado will provide specialized monitoring equipment. Transport leaves in 2 hours. As the meeting concluded, Naruto lingered behind while the others departed to prepare. There's something you're not telling everyone, he said once alone with Nezu, Aizawa, and All Might. Nezu's expression remained unreadable. What makes you say that? Because I've been around leaders my whole life. The Hokage always had that same look when sharing incomplete information. The principal chuckled. Perceptive. Yes, there is additional context, but it's speculative rather than confirmed. I'd still like to hear it. All Might exchanged glances with Aizawa before nodding. The energy signatures Nejire detected. They contain traces consistent with what we've measured from your Nine Tails entity. Naruto felt Kurama stir within his consciousness at the mention. You think another tailed beast is trying to break through? Or someone using similar energy, Aizawa clarified. The dimensional arbiters mentioned your presence creating, cascading instabilities. It's possible your arrival weakened barriers enough for others to detect and target. The implications hung heavily in the air. If another Jinchuriki, or worse, an Akatsuki member, had found a way to track interdimensional pathways, this world could face threats it was entirely unprepared to handle. I should go alone, Naruto decided. If it's connected to my world, it's my responsibility. Noble but impractical, Nezu countered immediately. You lack contextual knowledge of this world's geography, cultural norms, and transportation systems. Furthermore, isolation makes you an easier target. The principal is right, All Might added gently. Heroes work together, young Uzumaki. Even when the burden seems personal. Reluctantly, Naruto conceded the point. Just promise me if things get dangerous, you'll prioritize getting the others to safety. That's what heroes do, Aizawa stated simply. 2 hours later, they departed UA in an unmarked vehicle. Aizawa drove while Nejire enthusiastically explained the monitoring equipment she distributed among them, specialized wristbands that measured and recorded dimensional energy fluctuations. They'll vibrate if they detect significant anomalies, she explained. And they're synced to my primary scanner for real-time analysis. Momo examined her device with scientific interest. The sensitivity range, approximately 50 meters under normal conditions, Nejire replied. But environmental factors can affect performance. Certain geological formations seem to dampen readings. Like how cell phones lose signal in tunnels. Ochaco asked. Similar principle but far more complex. Nejire confirmed. Dimensional energy propagates through 11-dimensional spacetime rather than conventional electromagnetic spectrum. Naruto listened to the technical discussion with mild bewilderment. The scientific approach to chakra still felt foreign to him, in Konoha. Energy manipulation was taught through practice and sensation rather than mathematical formulas and technical specifications. As they left the Tokyo metropolitan area, urban landscapes gradually gave way to countryside. Naruto found himself entranced by the passing scenery, so similar to the Land of Fire in some ways, yet fundamentally different. The careful arrangement of rice fields, the Acacio, Null glimpses of shrines nestled among forested hills, the blend of ancient tradition and modern infrastructure. It's beautiful, he commented softly, more to himself than anyone else. Ochaco, seated beside him, followed his gaze. First time seeing rural Japan. First time seeing anything outside UA and its immediate surroundings, he admitted. She looked surprised. You've been here almost 2 months and never left campus. Security concerns, Aizawa stated from the driver's seat. Minimizing exposure while establishing his cover identity. Well, you picked a good first trip, Ochaco said warmly. Kyoto is incredible, full of history and traditions. My parents took me when I was little. The journey continued with Ochaco pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of her childhood visits to various regions. Her animated descriptions created a comfortable atmosphere that temporarily distracted from their mission's gravity. Several hours into their drive, they stopped at a roadside rest area. As the others stretched their legs and purchased refreshments, Naruto found a quiet spot overlooking a valley, momentarily seeking solitude. The landscape before him, mountains in the distance, forests and fields below, triggered an unexpected wave of homesickness. For a brief moment, he could almost imagine he was looking out from the Hokage monument, Konoha sprawling below instead of this unfamiliar countryside. "You're brooding, Kit," Kurama's voice rumbled within his mind. "Just thinking," Naruto replied internally. "This world has its own kind of beauty. All worlds do, in their fashion." The fox observed with unusual philosophic tone. "I've existed for centuries, witnessed countless changes to your world. Adaptation is survival. Is that your way of telling me to stop being sentimental?" A mental snort answered him. "It's my way of saying you're not the first being displaced from home. Yet here you stand, making new connections, finding new purpose. There are worse fates." Before Naruto could respond, a gentle voice interrupted his internal dialogue. "You okay?" Ochaco approached, offering a canned drink. "You looked pretty intense just now." "Thanks." He accepted the beverage. "Just remembering things." She stood beside him, gazing out at the view. "You're home." "Yeah." He took a sip, finding the drink sweeter than expected. Sometimes the similarities make it harder than the differences. Ochaco considered this, because it almost feels right, but then some detail reminds you it's not. Exactly. Naruto looked at her with appreciation for the insight. "How do you know?" She shrugged. "My family moved a lot when I was younger, following construction contracts. Each new town felt almost like the last one, but never quite right. Not quite the same scale as different dimensions." He noted with a small smile. "Maybe not," she agreed. "But the feeling might be similar." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the gentle breeze carrying the scent of nearby wildflowers. "For what it's worth," Ochaco finally said, "I'm glad you ended up in our dimension, even if it wasn't by choice." Something in her sincere expression sent an unexpected warmth through Naruto's chest. Before he could formulate a response, Aizawa called everyone back to the vehicle. The remainder of the journey passed quickly. As they approached Kyoto, Nejire's equipment began registering increasingly frequent energy fluctuations. "The readings are definitely intensifying," she confirmed, studying her displays. "But erratic rather than consistent. Like static interference," Momo suggested. "More like echoes," Nejire replied thoughtfully. "As if the original signal happened days ago and were detecting residual vibrations." They reached their destination by mid afternoon, a small traditional inn near the outskirts of Kyoto, strategically located between three potential anomaly sites identified on Nejire's maps. "We'll establish base here," Aizawa instructed as they unloaded equipment. "Initial reconnaissance tonight at the closest site, full investigation beginning tomorrow." After settling into their rooms, Naruto and Aizawa sharing one, the three girls another, they gathered to review the mission parameters in detail. "Our primary target is Kaneyama Shrine," Aizawa explained, displaying images of an ancient stone structure partially reclaimed by forest. "Local legends claim it was built by visitors from beyond the stars who taught humans to channel spiritual energy." "Sounds like early chakra users," Naruto observed. Nejire nodded enthusiastically. "The historical parallels are fascinating. Many ancient sites worldwide contain references to energy manipulation predating quirk emergence. Our objective is data collection, not historical research," Aizawa reminded them. "We observe, record, and report. No engagement with potential hostiles without explicit authorization." As darkness fell, they prepared for their initial reconnaissance. Dressed in civilian clothes with monitoring equipment concealed, they approached the ancient shrine on foot through forested paths. Kaneyama Shrine stood in a secluded clearing, a collection of red stone structures arranged in a precise geometric pattern. Even in the moonlight, Naruto could see the shrine's unusual architecture, different from both standard Japanese designs and anything from his world. "The energy readings are strongest at the central altar," Nejire whispered, consulting her device. They approached cautiously. The central structure consisted of a stone platform supporting a square column carved with intricate symbols. Moss and lichen had claimed portions of the surface, but many markings remained visible beneath. These don't match any historical Japanese writing system, Momo observed. Studying the carvings, Naruto stepped closer, feeling a strange resonance as he approached the monument. Something about the symbols seemed almost familiar, tickling the edges of his memory. I know these, he said suddenly, reaching toward a particular sequence of markings. They're an ancient form of. The moment his fingers touched the stone, searing pain exploded behind his eyes. The world around him blurred, colors inverting as his consciousness was violently pulled elsewhere. Naruto. Kurama's roar echoed in his mind as reality distorted. Visions flashed through his awareness. A massive battle. Chakra explosions illuminating night skies, a tear in reality's fabric, figures passing through, some willingly, others pulled against their will. He saw unfamiliar shinobi in ancient armor, carrying scrolls and weapons, emerging into a world not their own. Generations passing as they integrated, hidden among local populations, powers gradually diluting through bloodlines until only myths remained. The visions accelerated. Artifacts sealed away, knowledge preserved in secret traditions, guardians maintaining vigilance across centuries until, recently, something awakening, calling across dimensions. Sensing his arrival as a beacon, with a gasping breath, Naruto slammed back into the present moment. He found himself on his knees before the stone, Ochaco and Momo, supporting him from either side while Aizawa and Nejire formed a protective perimeter. Naruto. Can you hear me? Ochaco's worried voice penetrated the lingering disorientation. Yeah, he managed, throat unexpectedly dry. I'm here. What happened? Aizawa demanded, eyes scanning the surroundings for threats. Some kind of chakra imprint, Naruto explained, struggling to organize the flood of information. Like a memory seal, but ancient. When I touched it, before he could continue, Nejire's equipment began emitting urgent alerts. Massive energy spike, she warned. Something's forming. He air above the central altar shimmered, light bending unnaturally as space itself seemed to fold inward. A sphere of distortion expanded, crackling with familiar blue energy that Naruto instantly recognized. That's chakra, he confirmed, pushing himself upright despite lingering dizziness. Pure chakra manifestation. Evacuate now, Aizawa ordered, capture weapon readied. Wait, Naruto countermanded, moving toward the phenomenon. It's not a breach, it's a message. The sphere pulsed, then projected a beam of light that formed into a three-dimensional image, a figure wearing traditional shinobi attire from an era centuries before Naruto's time. Though translucent and flickering, the projection's features were clear, an elderly man with a distinctive forehead protector bearing an unfamiliar symbol. Inheritor of the Six Paths. The projection spoke in archaic Japanese that Naruto somehow understood perfectly. If you receive this message, then our greatest fears and hopes are realized simultaneously. The barriers between worlds have thinned once more. He's talking to you, Ochaco whispered, eyes wide. The projection continued. I am Takehiko of the Uzumaki clan, guardian of the seventh seal. Our ancestors came to this world during the great dimensional rupture 5 centuries past. Though most of our brethren were lost to the void between worlds, those who survived established guardianship of the crossing points. Naruto stepped forward, drawn by the mention of his clan name. He's an Uzumaki, he murmured in disbelief. We sealed our knowledge and diminished our powers to better integrate with this world, knowing that someday the barriers might weaken again. That time has come. The seals are failing, the guardians dwindle, and something seeks to exploit the pathways we once traveled. The projection's expression grew grave. Jinchuriki of the 9 tails, you must complete what we began. 7 seals must be renewed or completely severed. Fail, and both worlds consumption by that which dwells between dimensions. With those ominous words, the projection collapsed into particles of light that scattered throughout the clearing before fading entirely. Silenk. Fell as they processed what they'd witnessed. Well, Nejire finally said, that was dramatically informative. An ancestral chakra imprint, Naruto explained, mind racing. Advanced Uzumaki sealing technique. They specialized in such things. Your clan, Momo noted. They crossed dimensions centuries ago. Apparently some did, Naruto confirmed, still processing the revelation. I never knew. The Uzumaki clan was scattered and nearly destroyed before I was born. Aizawa surveyed the area with professional caution. The projection mentioned 7 seals, consistent with Hado's detection of 7 anomaly sites. And something exploiting the pathways, Ochaco added worriedly. Naruto approached the stone altar again, examining the symbols with new understanding. These are modified Fuin-J, UTSU markings, sealing techniques unique to the Uzumaki clan. This entire shrine is a massive containment seal designed to stabilize the dimensional boundary. Can you repair it? Nejire asked. Alred, why scanning the structure with her equipment? Maybe, if I understood the complete system. Naruto traced the weathered carvings. But it's deteriorated over centuries. And without knowing how all 7 seals interconnect. Momo stepped forward, placing her hand on the stone beside Naruto's. Perhaps I can help, if I can analyze the material composition. She concentrated, her creation quirk AC. Chivating not to produce an object but to sense the stone's properties. Fascinating. The stone itself contains unusual elements, including traces of material not found on the periodic table. Extra-dimensional matter, Nejire theorized. Hovering closer, the stone itself might have crossed over. Their investigation continued for another hour, cataloging symbols and taking readings from various points around the shrine. Naruto attempted to connect with the residual chakra, but the initial imprint had been a one-time message triggered by his specific energy signature. We should return to the inn, Aizawa eventually decided. Process what we've learned and plan our next steps. As they gathered their equipment, Naruto lingered at the central altar, processing the revelation that members of his clan had traversed dimensions centuries before him. Had they felt the same displacement he now experienced? The same longing for home? Ochaco approached as the others started down the path. Coming. Yeah, he replied, reluctantly turning from the shrine. Just trying to wrap my head around all this. Finding out your family has an interdimensional history is pretty heavy, she acknowledged. It's strange, Naruto admitted as they walked. I grew up without any family, never knowing anything about the Uzumaki clan except my name. Now I learn they were dimensional travelers who became guardians in this world. Ochaco considered this thoughtfully. Maybe it's not coincidence you ended up here. Maybe something guided you to where your clan once was. You believe in that kind of thing? Destiny. I believe connections exist that we don't fully understand, she replied simply. Whether you call it destiny or something else. Her perspective provided unexpected comfort. Not that Naruto had been destined to be stranded in this dimension, but that perhaps his arrival connected to something larger, a legacy he hadn't known existed. They returned to the inn and convened in Aizawa's room to compile their findings. Nejire's equipment processed the collected data while Momo meticulously documented the seal symbols they'd recorded. Based on the projection's warning and these readings, Nejire concluded. The dimensional barriers are indeed deteriorating. Each of the 7 sites contains a stabilizing seal that's gradually failing. Can they be repaired? Aizawa asked, directing the question to Naruto. He considered carefully. Possibly. Traditional Uzumaki sealing jutsu requires specific chakra application and usually blood connection to the original caster. Since they were my clan, your blood might activate restoration protocols within the existing framework, Momo theorized, completing his thought. Worth attempting at one site before committing to all 7, Aizawa decided. Tomorrow we'll conduct a controlled test. As they prepared for bed, Naruto found sleep elusive. The day's revelation circled in his mind. His clan's unexpected connection to this world, the deteriorating seals. The ominous warning about that which dwells between dimensions. He slipped outside to the inn's small garden, seeking fresh air and clarity. The night was clear, stars visible above despite the distant city lights. Finding a quiet spot beneath a maple tree, he settled into meditation position, connecting with his internal chakra flow to steady his thoughts. Several minutes passed before he sensed another presence approaching. Couldn't sleep either, Ochaco asked softly, settling beside him. Too much to process, Naruto admitted. Same. She looked upward at the stars. Plus Nejire Senpai talks in her sleep about quantum equations. It's surprisingly intimidating. Naruto chuckled, grateful for the moment of levity. You're handling all this dimensional stuff pretty well, considering. I figure it's not that different from quirks appearing a few centuries ago, she reasoned. People suddenly developing superpowers must have seemed equally impossible before it happened. Good point, he conceded. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Ochaco spoke again. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. If you could go back to your world, I mean, would you? Right now, if you had the choice. The question caught Naruto off guard. He'd been so focused on adapting to his circumstances that he'd pushed aside the hypothetical possibility of return. A month ago, I would have said yes without hesitation, he answered honestly. But now, he glanced at her, moonlight softly illuminating her features. I've found connections here too. It wouldn't be an easy choice anymore. Something shifted in her expression, a subtle softening, perhaps hope. I'm glad that it wouldn't be easy, I mean. Before Naruto could respond, a distant explosion shattered the night's stillness. They both jumped to their feet, instincts immediately alert. That came from the direction of the shrine, Naruto noted, already moving. Ochaco matched his pace. Should we wake the others? No time. He formed a familiar hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. A clone appeared beside them. Get Aizawa and the others, Naruto instructed it. Tell them to follow as soon as possible. The clone nodded and raced back toward the inn while Naruto and Ochaco continued toward the disturbance. We should be cautious, Ochaco warned as they ran. We don't know what we're dealing with. I can sense chakra ahead, Naruto replied, his awareness extending outward. Definitely not from this world. Too refined, too focused. They reached the forest path leading to the shrine, where an unnatural blue glow pulsed through the trees ahead. Moving silently now, they approached the clearing. What they found stopped them in their tracks. The shrine's central altar had been partially demolished. Floating above the rubble was a figure cloaked in swirling energy, humanoid but distorted, as if not fully materialized in this reality. Around the clearing, 3 individuals in modern clothing performed synchronized hand signs Naruto instantly recognized as chakra molding techniques. They're using jutsu, he whispered in disbelief. But their chakra feels wrong. Corrupted somehow. Ochaco studied the scene with tactical assessment. The floating figure seems to be emerging from some kind of portal. Are they pulling something through from your world? Not just something, Naruto realized with growing horror. That chakra signature, it's similar to a tailed beast, but twisted. The 3 figures completed their sequence, causing the dimensional distortion to expand. The partially materialized entity emitted an inhuman howl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. We need to disrupt their jutsu, Naruto decided. They're forcing a breach that could destabilize both worlds. How do we approach? Ochaco asked, already analyzing angles and positions. I'll create a diversion on the far side. When they're distracted, you use work on whatever equipment they're using, those devices at their feet. She nodded, determined. Ready when you are. Naruto created 3 shadow clones that immediately scattered into flanking positions while he and Ochaco circled to approach from different directions. Once in position, the clones launched simultaneous attacks, kunai flying toward the ritualists accompanied by shouts to maximize disruptive impact. The strategy worked. The 3 figures broke formation, turning to defend against the perceived threat. The dimensional distortion wavered, the emerging entity shrieking in frustration as its manifestation destabilized. Ochaco seized the opportunity, darting forward to touch the nearest piece of equipment, some kind of technological device emitting pulses of energy toward the distortion. The moment her quirk activated, the device floated upward, breaking its connection to the ground and disrupting the energy flow. Intruders! One of the ritualists shouted, spotting Ochaco. Naruto emerged from cover, chakra gathering visibly around his form. Whatever you're doing stops now, he declared. You're tearing a hole between dimensions. The leader of the group turned toward him, expression shifting from anger to recognition. The 9 Tails Jinchuriki, he stated in heavily accented Japanese. Your presence confirms our calculations. The boundary is weakest where your chakra has passed. Who are you? Naruto demanded. How do you know about Jinchuriki? The man smiled coldly. We are the remnants, those who preserved the old knowledge when your clan sought to bury it. He formed a rapid sequence of hand signs that Naruto recognized too late. Snake, ram, monkey, boar, horse, tiger. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. A massive sphere of flame erupted toward Naruto and Ochaco. Acting on instinct, Naruto countered with his own technique. Water style. Water wall. The jutsus collided in a violent hiss of steam that engulfed the clearing. Through the obscuring vapor, Naruto sensed movement as the ritualists regrouped. Ochaco, he called. You okay? Fine, she responded from nearby, but they're trying to restart the ritual. Indeed, through dispersing steam, Naruto could see the three figures reassembling around the damaged altar, their devices realigning despite Ochaco's intervention. We need to stop them completely, he decided, forming new hand signs. Earth style. Mobile core. The ground beneath the ritualists liquefied momentarily, throwing them off balance as Naruto manipulated the terrain. Simultaneously, his remaining clones converged, engaging the disoriented enemies in close combat. Meanwhile, the dimensional distortion continued fluctuating, the partially manifested entity struggling to either complete its emergence or retreat. Its form shifted constantly, sometimes appearing humanoid, other times bestial, occasionally dissolving into pure energy. One of the ritualists broke away from the clone assault, forming new hand signs. Lightning style. Electromagnetic murder. Crackling electricity arced toward Ochaco, who had been moving to disable more of their equipment. Naruto acted without thinking, throwing himself into the attack's path. The lightning struck him directly, pain searing through his system as he absorbed the brunt of the technique. Naruto! Ochaco cried out in horror. Despite the pain, he remained standing, Harem's chakra instinctively surging to protect his system from the electrical damage. I'm fine, he gasped, orange energy flickering visibly around him now. Focus on disrupting their formation. Ochaco's expression hardened with determination. Using her quirk on herself, she reduced her gravity to leap impossibly high, then released the effect at the apex to drop directly toward the central ritualist. The unexpected aerial assault caught him off guard. Her heel connected solidly with his shoulder, sending him sprawling and breaking the triangular formation they'd been maintaining. The dimensional rift immediately destabilized further. Violent energy discharges lashing outward as the entity howled in frustration. The other ritualists scrambled to compensate, but without proper formation, their control was slipping. It's collapsing. The leader shouted. Retreat protocol. The three activated devices on their wrists, their forms shimmering as some kind of transportation technique engaged. Before they could completely disappear, Naruto managed to grab the nearest one, disrupting the technique and keeping him anchored. You're not going anywhere, he growled, Kurama's influence lending his voice a deeper resonance. The captured ritualist struggled futilely, then went limp with a resigned sigh. It doesn't matter. The process has begun. The boundaries are already compromised. Above the ruined altar, the dimensional rift contracted violently, pulling the partially manifested entity back into the void with a final, earth-shaking roar. The unnatural energy dispersed in a shockwave that knocked everyone to the ground. Electronics shorting out and trees bending from the force. Then stillness. The only sound remaining was the gentle rustling of leaves and the groans of those picking themselves up from the forest floor. Naruto secured the captured ritualist with chakra-enhanced restraints as Aizawa and the others finally arrived at the clearing. What happened? Aizawa demanded, taking in the destruction. They were attempting to bring something through from the void between dimensions, Naruto explained, indicating their prisoner. Some kind of corrupted tailed beast energy. Nejire immediately began scanning the area, her equipment partly functional despite the energy surge. The dimensional tear has closed, but residual energy is everywhere. This reading is off the charts. Momo approached the damaged altar, examining what remained of the ancient seal. They deliberately targeted the weakest point in the containment structure. Who are they? Aizawa asked, studying their captive. He claims to be part of some group that preserved knowledge my clan tried to hide, Naruto replied. They knew about Jinchuriki and could perform jutsu. Descendants of shinobi who crossed over centuries ago. Momo theorized. Perhaps opposing factions to the Uzumaki guardians mentioned in the projection. The prisoner smiled thinly. The Uzumaki were fools. They sought to contain power rather than utilize it. The space between worlds holds energy beyond imagination. Energy that rightfully belongs to those with the knowledge to harness it. And the entity you were summoning? Naruto pressed. A guide. The first of many. When all 7 seals fall, the true power will emerge. Aizawa's capture weapon wrapped around the man's throat. How many of you are there? Where are the others targeting? The prisoner merely smiled. You cannot stop what has already begun. The wounds in reality will fester and spread. Our master comes. Before anyone could react further, the man's body suddenly convulsed. His eyes rolled back, foam appearing at his lips as he collapsed. Poison capsule, Aizawa confirmed after checking him. Hidden in a false tooth. Common suicide method for covert operatives. Naruto knelt beside the body, searching for any identifying features or items. A small tattoo on the man's wrist caught his attention, a symbol resembling a stylized eye surrounded by concentric circles. I know this mark, he said grimly. It's an ancient symbol associated with the Otsutsuki clan, celestial beings who harvested chakra across dimensions in my world. Harvest in what sense? Momo asked, concern evident. They consumed entire worlds, Naruto explained. Drained them of chakra and life force, leaving husks behind. The implications hung heavily in the pre-dawn air. If Otsutsuki influence had somehow persisted in this dimension for centuries, cultivated by human followers with partial knowledge of their powers. We need to secure the remaining sites immediately, Aizawa decided. Before they can target the next seal. As they prepared to leave the destroyed shrine, Naruto noticed Ochaco standing apart from the group, her expression troubled as she stared at the ruined altar. You okay? He asked, approaching quietly. You jumped in front of lightning for me, she stated, voice wavering slightly. You could have been killed. I heal pretty fast, he replied with attempted lightness. Perks of being a Jinchuriki. She turned to face him fully, eyes shining with unshed tears. That's not the point. You didn't even hesitate. You just put yourself between me and danger without a second thought. Of course I did, Naruto said simply. I care about you. The words emerged naturally, without calculation or restraint. In the fading adrenaline of battle and the glow of early dawn light filtering through the trees, emotional barriers seemed less significant than the truth of his growing feelings. Ochaco's eyes widened, color rising in her cheeks. Before she could respond, Aizawa called everyone to regroup. We need to move, he instructed. Authorities will investigate the explosion soon, and our presence here is better left undocumented. As they hastily gathered their equipment and prepared to depart, Naruto and Ochaco maintained a heightened awareness of each other, exchanging glances charged with unspoken meanings and nascent emotion. Neither was quite ready to fully articulate. The sun rose as they made their way back to the inn, illuminating a day that promised both new dangers and deepening connections. The following days unfolded in a blur of activity. Upon their return to UA, Nezu convened an emergency meeting with select staff to address the escalating dimensional crisis. Based on their findings and the prisoners' cryptic statements, a coordinated response became top priority. We've identified all 7 seal locations, Nezu explained to the assembled team in his office. Security details have been dispatched to each site, but our resources are stretched thin. All Might, in his diminished form, studied the displayed map. The attacks appear coordinated, professional precision, which suggests organization, funding, and inside information. Aizawa added, how did they know about Uzumaki's dimensional origin? That information was classified, a concerning question indeed, Nezu acknowledged. One possibility is that they detected his unique energy signature independently through whatever methods they used to locate dimensional weak points. Naruto, who had been mostly silent during the briefing, finally spoke. What about the remaining seals? Can they be reinforced rather than just guarded? All eyes turned to him as Nezu nodded thoughtfully. That's precisely what we hope you might accomplish, Mr. Uzumaki. As the only person with Uzumaki blood and chakra capabilities, you represent our best chance at seal restoration. I've been studying the symbols we documented, Momo added, displaying her meticulously organized notes. There appears to be a consistent pattern that suggests blood activation combined with specific chakra application could indeed reinforce the deteriorating boundaries. Nejire bounced excitedly, and I've developed a portable scanner that can map the chakra pathways within each seal structure. It should help guide Naruto's reinforcement efforts. The planning continued, with responsibilities assigned and contingencies established. Naruto would attempt to reinforce the next most vulnerable seal under controlled conditions, while hero teams monitored the remaining sites for suspicious activity. As the meeting concluded, Naruto found himself pulled aside by All Might. "A moment, young Uzumaki," the former symbol of peace requested. When they were alone, All Might's expression grew serious. "There's an aspect of this situation we haven't addressed publicly. The Hero Commission has taken interest in your unique circumstances." Naruto tensed. "What kind of interest?" "The cautious kind," All Might replied carefully. "They've requested a full briefing on your abilities, origin, and potential connections to these dimensional incursions." "So I'm a suspect?" "Not explicitly, but they're concerned about national security implications." All Might placed a reassuring hand on Naruto's shoulder. "Principal Nezu is handling the situation diplomatically. For now, focus on the SEAL reinforcement mission." Naruto nodded, though unease lingered. In his experience, government organizations rarely approached unprecedented situations with openness and understanding. Later that afternoon, as final preparations were made for their departure to the next SEAL site, Naruto sought out Momo in the library where she was completing additional research. "Find anything useful?" he asked, sliding into the seat across from her. She looked up from a stack of ancient texts. "Possibly. These historical accounts reference star people who could bend reality through blood and spirit. The descriptions align remarkably well with chakra usage as you've described it. So shinobi who crossed over did leave historical traces." "It appears so," Momo confirmed. "Though largely dismissed as mythology or exaggerated folklore by modern historians." Naruto glanced at her meticulous notes, impressed by the depth of her research. "Thanks for doing all this. I know SEAL theory isn't exactly light reading." "On the contrary, I find it fascinating," she replied with genuine enthusiasm. "The mathematical precision underlying chakra manifestation suggests universal NTS that transcend dimensional boundaries. The implications for quirk theory are revolutionary." Her academic passion reminded Naruto of Sakura's intellectual approach to challenges, though Momo possessed a calm confidence uniquely her own. "I have a question," he said after a moment. "Something that's been bothering me since Kyoto." "Yes," that cultist said, "the wounds in reality will fester and spread. What if my presence here is making things worse? What if I'm the wound they're exploiting?" Momo set down her pen, giving him her full attention. "That's a reasonable concern based on available evidence. However, correlation doesn't imply causation. The dimensional weaknesses predated your arrival, the ancient seals prove that." "But I might be accelerating the breakdown," he pressed. "My chakra could be interfering with the barriers. Or," she countered thoughtfully, "your chakra might be precisely what's needed to repair them. The projection specifically addressed you as the solution, not the problem." Her logical assessment provided some comfort, though Naruto's concerns weren't entirely assuaged. "I hope you're right. We'll know soon enough," Momo replied pragmatically. SEAL reinforcement attempt should provide empirical evidence either way. As evening approached, Naruto returned to his dormitory to prepare for their departure the following morning. Their next day, Tanation was a remote mountain shrine in northern Japan, one of the 7 seal points showing increased dimensional instability. Entering his room, he immediately sensed something amiss. The air felt charged, disrupted. Moving cautiously, he discovered the source, a small scroll placed on his pillow, bearing a wax seal with the Uzumaki spiral. "What the?" he murmured, approaching carefully. "Careful, Kit," Kurama warned within him. "That contains concentrated chakra, old and powerful." Naruto examined the scroll without touching it. The paper appeared ancient yet perfectly preserved, the red SP. Iral seal unmistakably from his clan's traditional fuinjutsu techniques. How did this get here? He wondered aloud, extending his senses for any lingering presence. The dormitory remained secure, no evidence of forced entry or unauthorized access. After confirming no immediate danger, he carefully broke the seal. The scroll unfurled automatically, ancient characters glowing with faint blue chakra. Unlike the modern Japanese he'd adapted to in this world, these characters were written in the ancient script of the shinobi nations. "To the inheritor of our legacy," he read aloud, translating the archaic text. "If this message finds you, then you have discovered the first key to restoration. 7 seals bind the pathways between worlds. 7 guardians maintain the boundaries. But time has thinned our bloodlines and weakened our vigil. The scroll continued, detailing specific seal reinforcement techniques designed for Uzumaki chakra, precise instructions for each of the 7 sites. More troubling, it warned of the Devourers, who sought to break the seals and summon their master from the void between dimensions. The final line of defense lies within your blood, the message concluded. The power of the 9 tails, combined with Uzumaki sealing techniques, can either repair or permanently sever the pathways. Choose wisely, for both worlds hang in balance. As he finished reading, the scroll began to dissolve, the paper turning to glowing particles that swirled around his hands before absorbing into his skin. Knowledge flooded his mind. Seal configurations, chakra molding techniques, activation sequences, information passed through generations of Uzumaki guardians, now transferred directly to him. Naruto sat heavily on his bed, processing the technical knowledge suddenly integrated into his consciousness. The scroll had effectively transferred decades of specialized training directly to him, a forbidden technique in itself, one that risked overwhelming the recipient's mind. Impressive, Kurama commented. Your ancestors were even more skilled in sealing jutsu than legend suggested. This changes everything, Naruto replied internally. With these techniques, we can actually repair the damaged seals. Assuming that's the right course of action, the fox noted. Sealing the pathways permanently might prevent your eventual return home. This sobering observation gave Naruto pause. The scroll had presented 2 options: repair the dimensional boundaries or sever them completely. The latter would theoretically prevent any further incursions, but might also permanently strand him in this world. A knock at his door interrupted these thoughts. Naruto. Ochaco's voice called softly. Are you in there? He opened the door to find her looking troubled. Everything okay? He asked. I was about to ask you the same thing, she replied. Nejire Senpai's equipment detected a massive energy surge in this building a few minutes ago. She sent me to check if you were all right. Naruto hesitated, then stepped aside to let her enter. Something happened, he admitted, closing the door behind her. A message from my clan, from the past. He explained about the scroll and the knowledge transfer. Watching her expression shift from concern to amazement. So you suddenly know how to fix the seals? She clarified. Just like that. The technical knowledge, yes, he confirmed. Though putting it into practice will still be challenging. Sealing jutsu requires precise chakra control and usually years of practice. But this gives us a real chance, she noted optimistically. Better than guessing or experimenting. There's something else, Naruto added, more somberly. The scroll mentioned 2 options, repair or permanent severance. If we completely sever the dimensional pathways. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You could never go back. Exactly. Ochaco sat on the edge of his desk, processing this implication. Is that something you're considering? I don't know, Naruto answered honestly. If severing the connections is the only way to protect both worlds from these devourers. He didn't complete the thought, but the weight of potential sacrifice hung in the air between them. You'd give up any chance of seeing your home again to protect people in both worlds, Ochaco stated softly, not a question but an acknowledgement. Wouldn't you? He asked, if it meant saving everyone. A sad smile touched her lips. That's such a hero answer. And yes, I probably would. She met his gaze directly. But it's okay to admit it would hurt. That loss is still loss. Even when the choice is right. Her understanding, the permission to acknowledge the personal cost behind noble choices, unexpectedly cracked something in Naruto's carefully maintained composure. He'd been approaching this entire dimensional displacement with determined adaptation, focusing on immediate challenges rather than dwelling on what he'd lost. I miss them, he admitted, voice roughening. Kakashi-sensei, Sakura, Sasuke, all of them. I don't even know if they survived the final battle, if my sacrifice even worked. And now I might have to choose to never find out. Ochaco moved closer, hesitating briefly before placing her hand over his. Whatever you decide, you're not facing it alone anymore. You have people here who care about you too. The simple touch and insert words provided more comfort than elaborate reassurances could have. In that moment, something shifted between them, the tentative connection that had been building crystallizing into something deeper, more certain. Naruto turned his hand beneath hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. Thank you, he said simply. Their eyes met, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Slowly, almost hesitantly, they leaned toward each other, the space between them diminishing. Until Nejire burst through the door without knocking, equipment beeping frantically in her hands. Energy signature confirmed. It's definitely. Oh, she stopped abruptly, taking in the scene before her. Am I interrupting something? I am, aren't I? Sorry, but also not sorry because this data is critically important. Ochaco jumped back, face flushing crimson. And Nejire senpai, don't you knock. Emergencies supersede knocking protocols. Nejire replied cheerfully, though she had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. And dimensional anomalies definitely qualify as emergencies. Naruto, recovering from the moment's disruption, focused on her equipment. What did you detect? A massive chakra transfer consistent with high-level fuinjutsu. She explained, excitement overtaking awkwardness. But that's not the important part. The transfer created a temporary resonance that highlighted all 7 seal locations simultaneously. She activated a holographic display showing a map of Japan with 7 pulsing points of light. And look at the energy patterns, they're synchronized now, communicating with each other. Naruto studied the display with growing understanding. The knowledge transfer activated something in the seal network. They're preparing for reinforcement, or complete severance, Ochaco added softly. Nejire looked between them curiously. Severance. What did I miss? As they explained the scroll's message and the transferred techniques, Nejire's scientific mind immediately grasped the implications. Fascinating, she exclaimed. A binary choice between dimensional repair or complete separation. The energy requirements for either would be astronomical. Which is probably why it needs Kurama's power, Naruto noted. A tailed beast's chakra could provide enough energy to affect reality itself. Nejire's equipment suddenly emitted a new series of alerts. Another anomaly detected. This one's different. Not at any of the seal sites. The holographic map zoomed in on a location in Tokyo's industrial district. A red pulsing dot indicated energy readings similar to but distinct from the seal locations. That's not far from here, Ochaco observed. And definitely not a known seal site, Naruto confirmed, studying the location. Could be the cultists establishing a new breach point. Nejire's fingers flew over her equipment. Energy signature is growing rapidly. Whatever's happening is accelerating. Naruto made an immediate decision. We need to investigate now, before it destabilizes further. He turned to Ochaco. Alert Aizawa and the others. Nejire and I will do preliminary reconnaissance. I'm coming with you, Ochaco stated firmly. Nejire senpai can send the alert while we travel. Seeing her determination, Naruto nodded. Let's move then. Whatever's happening won't wait for official approval. Within minutes, they were racing toward the anomaly site, Nejire flying slightly above while Naruto and Ochaco took to the rooftops, her with gravity-assisted leaps, him with chakra-enhanced speed. As they approached the industrial district, the air itself seemed to thicken. Light bending strangely around certain areas. Nejire's equipment emitted increasingly urgent alerts. Dimensional thinning in progress. She called down. Similar energy signature to the Kyoto incident but much stronger. They arrived at an abandoned warehouse complex. The central building pulsed with unnatural blue light, windows flaring rhythmically like a heartbeat. Even from outside, they could feel reality itself warping around the structure. They're definitely attempting another summoning, Naruto assessed, sensing the chakra patterns. But bigger than before. Aizawa and backup are 20 minutes out. Nejire reported, checking her communicator. Orders are to observe only until they arrive. A sudden surge of power from within the warehouse made the decision for T. The roof partially dissolved as a column of energy erupted skyward, forming a swirling vortex above the building. We don't have 20 minutes, Naruto decided. That breach is opening now. Ochaco studied the warehouse's structure with professional assessment. I count 6 entry points. Loading docks on the east side would provide the most cover. I'll create shadow clones for reconnaissance, Naruto suggested. Map the interior before we commit. Nejire hovered lower. My scanners can penetrate the outer walls, but the dimensional distortion interferes with detailed readings. I'm detecting at least 8 human-sized energy signatures inside. Naruto formed hand signs, creating 10 shadow clones that immediately dispersed to circle the building. Meanwhile, They approached the eastern loading docks as Ochaco had suggested, moving silently between abandoned shipping containers and rusted equipment. The clones reported back through dispersal, multiple cultists inside performing a synchronized ritual around a central platform where a dimensional tear was actively expanding. Unlike the Kyoto incident, this breach appeared more stable, intentionally reinforced with technological components integrated into the ritual circle. They've learned from their previous failure, Naruto noted grimly. This breach is designed to remain open even if their formation is disrupted. Can you close it with the Uzumaki sealing techniques? Ochaco asked. Maybe, if I can get close enough to the focal point. But I'll need time and concentration, which means dealing with the cultists first. Nejire's eyes gleamed with determination. Ochaco and I can handle interference while you work on the breach. My wave attacks are effective at mid-range disruption, and her gravity manipulation can disable without requiring direct combat. Naruto nodded, impressed by their tactical thinking. We'll need perfect timing. I'll create another wave of clones as the initial distraction. Nejire, target IR equipment first. Destroy anything connected to the ritual circle. Ochaco, focus on making the cultists themselves weightless to disrupt their positioning. And you? Ochaco asked. I'll go stray for the breach with the sealing technique. Kurama's power should be enough to force it closed if I can reach the center. They synchronized their communicators and moved into position. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, centering himself and connecting with Kurama's chakra. Ready, Fox. This won't be simple, Kid, the Nine Tails warned. That breach connects directly to the void between dimensions. Whatever they're summoning has considerable power. Then we'll just have to be stronger, Naruto replied with characteristic determination. At his signal, they launched their coordinated attack. Hado clones burst through multiple entry points simultaneously while Nejire blasted through the roof, waves of spiral energy targeting the technological components surrounding the ritual circle. Ochaco used the distraction to slip inside, immediately touching two cultists who floated helplessly toward the ceiling. The central breach pulsed violently as the ritual was disrupted, but as Naruto had feared, it remained open, stabilized by the technology integrated into the design. At its center, a dark form was gradually materializing, neither fully human nor beast but something otherworldly and disturbing. The master comes, one cultist shouted fanatically despite the chaos. The devourer awakens. Naruto fought his way toward the breach, kunai deflecting thrown weapons as he dispatched opponents with efficient taijutsu. The knowledge transferred from the Uzumaki scroll flowed through him now, his hands forming unfamiliar yet somehow instinctive seal patterns as he approached the dimensional tier. Sealing technique. Dimensional boundary restoration. He called out, slamming his palm onto the ground at the edge of the ritual circle. Chakra surged from his body, flowing outward in glow. Wing patterns that countered the breach's expansion. The partially materialized entity writhed in apparent pain, its form fluctuating as the dimensional opening began to contract. No, the lead cultist screamed, breaking away from combat with a shadow clone to charge toward Naruto. You cannot deny our salvation. Before he could reach Naruto, Ochaco intercepted, using her quirk on herself to deal a zero-gravity enhanced kick that sent the man tumbling across the warehouse floor. Focus on the seal, she called to Naruto. We've got this. The sealing technique required Naruto's complete concentration. Complex chakra patterns flowing through precise pathways as the Uzumaki knowledge guided his efforts. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fought against the entity's resistance, the breach stubbornly refusing to close completely. More power, he communicated to Kurama. Be careful, the fox cautioned. Too much of my chakra could destabilize your control. No choice, Naruto insisted. That thing can't be allowed through. He felt Kurama's acquiescence as orange chakra began flowing more freely through his system. His features sharpened, eyes shifting to crimson as the Nine Tails power enhanced the sealing technique. The entity in the breach howled, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Uzumaki, a voice echoed directly in Naruto's mind. Your clan has interfered for the last time. This world will feed us as yours would have. Not while I'm here, Naruto growled, forcing more power into the seal. The warehouse began to shake, structure. Al integrity compromised by the clashing energies. Support beams cracked, walls buckled, and the remaining cultists either fled or were caught in collapsing debris. Nejire, Ochaco, Naruto shouted, "Get out now, not without you." Ochaco responded, fighting her way back toward him despite the danger. The dimensional breach contracted further, the entity's manifestation destabilizing as it was forced back into the void. With a final surge of Kurama's chakra, Naruto completed the sealing technique, ancient Uzumaki symbols glowing brilliantly across the warehouse floor before sinking permanently into the concrete. The breach collapsed with a thunderous implosion that knocked everyone off their feet. A shockwave of released energy radiated outward, shattering every window and electronic device within a 100-meter radius. Then silence, broken only by the settling of debris and distant sirens. Naruto remained kneeling at the center of what had been the ritual circle, exhaustion overwhelming him as Kurama's chakra receded. Through blurring vision, he saw Ochaco picking herself up from the ground nearby, while Nejire descended from where she'd taken aerial refuge. "Did it work?" Ochaco asked, approaching unsteadily. "Temporary seal established," Naruto confirmed, voice hoarse. "Not permanent, but it should hold until we can implement the full solution at the original seal sites." Nejire's damaged equipment produced intermittent readings. Dimensional stability, re-establishing. The breach is closed, but residual energy remains significant. Ochaco reached Naruto, helping him to his feet. "You're hurt," she noted with concern, seeing blood trickling from his nose and ears, physical manifestations of chakra overexertion. "I'll heal," he assured her, though he leaned heavily on her support. "Kurama's already working on it." The sound of approaching vehicles announced the arrival of Aizawa and the hero backup. As they surveyed the destruction and secured the few cultists who hadn't escaped, Naruto briefed them on the encounter and the entity they'd prevented from fully manifesting. "It spoke to me," he explained to a grim-faced Aizawa. "Called itself a devourer. Said, my clan had interfered with their plans before." Consistent with the historical warnings, Aizawa noted. "And the sealing technique worked, but required more power than anticipated. A temporary solution at best." Naruto glanced at the sealed area, where faint energy still shimmered occasionally. "To permanently address this, we need to reinforce all 7 original seals." As medical personnel examined them for injuries and recovery teams began processing the scene, Naruto found himself seated in an ambulance beside Ochaco, who had refused to leave his side despite being cleared by the medics. "That was too close," she said quietly once they had a moment of privacy. "For a second there, I thought." "Me too," he admitted. "But hey, we stopped it." She took his hand, no hesitation this time. "What that thing said about your clan interfering before, your family has been protecting worlds from these entities for generations, haven't they?" Naruto nodded slowly. "Seems that way. Just one more legacy I never knew about." "It's a pretty amazing legacy," she offered with a small smile. "Being dimensional guardians." He looked at their joined hands, then up to meet her gaze. "When I was younger, all I wanted was to be Hokage, to be acknowledged, to protect my village. Now I'm fighting to protect entire dimensions I barely understand." "That's still you, though," Ochaco pointed out. Quote, "The core of who you are hasn't changed, just the scale of what you're protecting." In the flashing lights of emergency vehicles, with the adrenaline of battle fading and the weight of interdimensional responsibility settling on his shoulders, Naruto found unexpected comfort in her insight, in her ability to see through complicated circumstances to essential truths. About earlier, before Nejire interrupted, he began hesitantly. Ochaco's cheeks flushed slightly, but she didn't look away. "Yes, I'd like to finish that conversation sometime. When we're not dealing with dimensional catastrophes." A genuine smile bloomed on her face. "I'd like that too." Their moment was interrupted when Nejire bounded over, excitement overriding her usual respect for personal space. "The readings are incredible. The sealed breach is maintaining stability while emitting measurable quantum signatures that could revolutionize our understanding of multiversal physics. Despite everything, the danger, the exhaustion, the looming challenges, Naruto found himself laughing at Nejire's irrepressible enthusiasm. Ochaco joined in, the shared moment of levity a welcome respite from the gravity of their situation. As dawn broke over the damaged warehouse district, Naruto contemplated the path ahead. The knowledge transferred from his ancestors provided a way forward, but also a weighty choice: repair the diamond. Seonal boundaries or sever them permanently. Either way, he was no longer just a shinobi displaced in a strange world. He was an Uzumaki continuing a centuries-old mission, a guardian of the boundaries between worlds. And for the first time since his arrival, that role felt not just like responsibility, but like inheritance, a connection to the family he'd never known, and to the new bonds he was forming in this world that was slowly becoming home. Chapter 3 End.